I've heard a lot of research saying also the headphones, like I used to drive a lot in the field for work. So of course, I was always in the headphones in my ear and they said that was probably an effect.
In the car, it's in the car.
Muse.
So after.
Yeah, of course. Hi, good to see you. You look good, good to see you.
My man, how you doing?
Hi.
There, we have, how are you? Good to see you.
He's applying for the,
I'm aware.
yeah,
I saw.
good.
Hey, how are you? Well. Coming in for Valerie.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Oh, my man. I'm doing okay.
Oh. There. All is good. Always, 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 always. One? Oh, it was great.
But I was.
Oh, I know. It was dense. But the cool thing about it is they do it, once a month and they give opportunities for everybody to get together and
Yeah.
continue to. I ended up going to. Who's this? Oh. I ended up to the. Community Alliance. Yeah, so I can catch up with them again and talk a little, it was great. All right. I don't get any there. Promise. Oh, cool. Oop. Okay. Call to order 6:04 PM on March 7, 2023. We are here for our regular commission meeting. Madam Clerk, could you please do the roll call for us?
Mayor Groth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Amsler. Here. Commissioner Gonzalez, he's absent today. Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Olivera. Here. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we have Pledge of Allegiance. It was my week. Unfortunately, my 5-year-old could not be with us to lead us in the pledge. So I have it on good authority that someone here, it's someone's birthday today. Not. No. 30th birthday, right? So would you mind leading us in the pledge, Ms. Anderson? I already put you on the spot, but thank you very much.
Birthday.
Okay, turning to item 4, additions, deletions, withdrawals. Do I have a motion to accept the amended agenda as presented?
I'd like to request some changes, please, if you don't mind, Jonathan.
Okay.
I'd like to pull 9F and G from consent. We have a bunch of board appointments. Many of them are reappointing people to boards, but we have 2 boards where people are being appointed for the first time, and I think those should be pulled off and handled separately.
Is that F and G, correct?
F and G.
I noticed one of our applications is for both of those too. So if we appoint 1 to 1, then it wouldn't be.
Yeah, we need to have a discussion about that.
That makes sense.
Another thing, I'd like to pull my own item, which is 13A, the discussion on code. Art's not with us this evening, and it's a big conversation, and I'd like the full commission to be here for that. So I'd like to hold that for Art, please.
That would be fine with me. Does anyone have any comment on the amended agenda proposed by Commissioner Kennedy? No, I think we're comfortable with that. Okay, great. So,
Make a motion to accept the amended agenda.
okay, great. Do we have a second? Okay. And can we get a vote on the amended agenda?
Aye.
Okay. So we will move, we're gonna be moving 9F and 9G. Okay. Okay, very good. So we'll move on to 5, which is our presentations. The first of which is Women's History Month Proclamation, which I will read onto the record for us. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation. And whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of every charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military. And whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. Whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jonathan E. Groth, Mayor of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, joined by the entire commission, do hereby issue a proclamation calling to observe the month of March as Women's History Month, dated this 7th day of March, 2023. And we have a second proclamation, which I will now read onto the record. Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and I believe that this was done in conjunction with some elected officials in our neighboring city of Aventura, Florida, were brought to our attention by them. Whereas colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States among men and women combined, whereas colorectal cancer is one of the few cancers that can be prevented with timely screening, but 1 in 3 eligible Americans are not up to date on screening. Whereas colorectal cancer is estimated to by the #1 cancer killer for those ages 20 to 49 by 2030. Whereas Black Americans are 20% more likely to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer and about 40% more likely to die from the disease than other groups. Whereas colorectal cancer is expected to account for 11% of cancer deaths among Hispanic men and 9% of cancer deaths for Hispanic women. Whereas screening colonoscopy rates have still not returned to pre-COVID-19 levels. Whereas the national goal established by the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable is to strive to increase timely colorectal cancer screening rates to 80% in every community for all Americans eligible for screening. Whereas observing Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month during the month of March would provide a special opportunity to increase awareness and offer education on the importance of early detection and screening of colorectal cancer. Now therefore, I, Jonathan Groth, Mayor of Biscayne Park, Florida, do hereby proclaim March 2023 as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, public comment. We will open for public comments at this time.
Mayor, while we have the public here at the log cabin approach the microphone, should anybody on Zoom wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand by clicking the icon raise hands, which is on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar.
Dan Keys. Just want to comment on the discussion item for the Land Development Code workshop. I'm looking at the format here and I'm really not seeing who's participating in that workshop. Is that a strictly commission workshop? Is there going to be ample opportunities for back and forth discussion with the public who may have significant knowledgeable input to the process. I really think that you could just have a sit down with the commission and the public and your consultant and go through it and hear opinions, hear desires of certain people, some opinion as to what rights property owners have and what others believe they don't have with regard to privacy on their property. Please provide more substantial back and forth discussion with the public. I think you will benefit from that discussion. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. No other public comment here. Do we have any on Zoom? Oh, sorry, we have additional.
Good evening. My name is Michael Annott. I applied for the code board. I applied. I was just here to introduce myself. I was a commissioner from 2001 to 2003. I'm a 30-year trial attorney and I've lived in the village since 1999. I own multiple properties in the park and I think I'd be a good addition to the code commission or board. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment on Zoom?
I see none, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Do we have any commission reply to any of the comments that we've received? Okay. Let's move on to our reports. Can we start with our board reports, please?
Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm the chair of the Arts and Culture Board. I just wanted to give an update. We had our event, Jam in the Park, last weekend, the weekend before. And it was a huge success. It was a ton of fun. It was extremely hot, which is when we planned the time of the event, we planned it in January. So next year we will definitely be moving it to the later afternoon. But it was a good turnout and the kids did awesome and we got great feedback, we had residents attend. I had people afterwards that attended that weren't residents and told me, oh yeah, I was there and I loved it. And the students all had a really good time. Their families enjoyed it. So it was a big success. We have 2 events upcoming. We have Earth Hour, Saturday, March 25th. And that's an event we do every year right here outside where we turn off the lights at 8:30 for Earth Hour and we have a live band that's going to play as well. And there's a Luminaria workshop along with that, which I believe is next Wednesday. And then we have Jazz in the Park April 1st. And it's going to be longer, bigger, bolder, and better than ever. So hope to see all of you guys there. That's all. Any questions? April 1st, Saturday.
The Jam in the Park was a lot of fun. When we walked up to the
Oh, yeah.
to the park, we noticed that you could see everyone, like
In
a
the
line of
shade.
people sitting in the shade.
Yeah.
It was
We were not
fun.
expecting that. It's
No.
been so nice. And that day was just
With the
crazy.
violins, as you walked up, I just felt walking up with my family like, wow, this is beautiful. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
All of the artists.
It was fun.
incredible.
The kids did awesome. We're really proud of them.
Amazing.
And they felt super cool. And
Comfortable,
And,
yeah.
yeah.
Had
Yeah.
a
They
lot
were
of
very,
kids.
very talented kids.
thanks. Yeah, they were great. So next year, later afternoon, early evening, definitely. So thank you guys for going. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay, other board reports? If we don't have any further reports at this time, why don't we move on to commission reports? Do we have any reports from the commission at this time?
Yep, I'll go. I have a couple of real quick things. So last night I attended, thanks, Nicole. Last night I attended the planning board meeting and they're going to be sending a memo to us. Two things came up at the meeting that they asked me about during the meeting and, I gave them a little bit of a response, but they said they're going to write it up and send it to us. There's some ambiguity in our code regarding pods that came up last night during a discussion. So they asked assistance on that. And then as a result of the ordinance that we passed at the last meeting, where we no longer can require permits before someone demos, that is going to leave us in the position of empty lots and fences, and we need to sort of figure out our way through that. So they're going to be asking us for help on those two items. FYI, you might want to start thinking about that. A few weeks ago, I met with Miami-Dade County Commissioner Mickey Steinberg. She's our new commissioner here for our district. Had a really nice meeting with her here in the log cabin. She'd not been here before. It's always fun to be in the log cabin with people who haven't been here before. They get such a kick out of the building. It's really cute to see. So she was here, and we had a really nice meeting. She's opening her new office right here in North Miami on 123rd Street. So she's going to be our neighbor, which is really cool. And when she saw the building, she's like, wow, this is really nice. And my office is going to be really tiny. So I kind of took it upon myself to say, well, this building is available for special events and things. And as I talked to Mario about that, but she seemed interested in like really working closely with us because we'll be neighbors literally to her office. And she also is going to be scheduling through Mario a meeting with us. She wants to come in and have a brainstorming meeting with us and talk about what our priorities are and what she can help us with. I discussed what my personal priorities would be, but obviously I said I don't speak on behalf of the village, but we had a nice back and forth about some things. I also informed Parks and Parkways and the planning board that we changed the methodology for the Oasis and Sanctuary Awards and that they'll be handling that now. So both boards are aware. And I said that the village would provide them a date that they would need to submit the information by. And suggested that they talk to Shantae about that. So that's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Kennedy.
I'm good.
I have a number of things that I'd just like to bring up. There is a few residents had come up to me recently to ask about the progress of FPL in the burying of the lines, which I hadn't seen. I know we granted easements several years ago. So it was a good question to ask. Yeah, good question to ask at the time. And I spoke with our manager and it was explained to me that they are making progress, but they have to do it in grids. So if we have any of the residents that are on listening that had asked those questions, they are working on it. It's going grid by grid and they're making progress. So it is still happening despite our street not being done yet. That was good. Vice Mayor Amsler and I attended the Coastal Mayors meeting last week or the week prior. I already forgot, last Thursday, which was fantastic. It went so much longer than I expected, which was a great opportunity to meet with Mayor Valportal, Omar Nickerson. New Mayor of Palmetto Bay was there. We talked a lot with her. North Bay Village, Mayor Latham, he was there. It was just a great group of people. There were a lot of really good initiatives on how to keep our wastewater clean. One of the things that they said that I really liked was that water knows no boundaries and that all of this water will end up in the bay at some point. So even if we aren't right next to the water, it all will end up there. So it does affect, and they had some great ideas on things that go as far as fertilizer restrictions, which brought up our discussion the other day about the new landscapers bringing chemicals in, which reminded me of Commissioner Kennedy's proposal to not bring chemicals in. So I can appreciate that even more. So there was a lot of talk about that and just kind of initiatives on how we can better prepare our stormwater. We tied a little bit into the storm risk management study. I attended a Zoom hearing with Mayor Cava, where we walked through the initial plans for how to mitigate the effects of rising sea level water and what they're planning on doing both out on the beach and in the bay. It's very early planning stages still, so there's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to provide public comment and feedback, which is great. And I think the next major event is, I don't know why I'm getting that, I apologize, August of this year. There's going to be another kind of a second step in the planning stage there. So that was kind of a nice tie into the Coastal Mayors, and I don't want to steal all your thunder on that, so I'll let you kind of provide your thoughts too. I attended a meeting with Congresswoman Wilson on the the FAA Metroplex update. So that is the movement of the flight patterns for the airplanes that have been taking off from Miami International Airport. As a brief background, they moved those patterns from a little bit further south over Miami Beach up towards us. I know it's been an issue. We were supporting a lawsuit that was pending to try and move them away from us and in some of our surrounding communities. That lawsuit was unsuccessful. And this was a plea to Congresswoman Wilson to see if she could help the municipalities that are still trying to fight it. There wasn't a whole lot that she offered. There wasn't really a whole lot more she said she could do for us. She said that she would invite our constituents to write letters to the Secretary of Transportation, and she would reiterate the request to try and bring Secretary Buttigieg down here to discuss those items among many others. But they extended the process for comment on the FAA plan. They issued their opinion anyway, which led to the lawsuit. The lawsuit was unsuccessful, so we're kind of stuck right now. Really, what we need to do is we need to see an outcry of constituents saying that this is the problem, and maybe appeal to the Department of Transportation that way. So she said she would look into it and see if there's anything else that can be done, but we're approaching a dead end, I think, right now, unfortunately. So that was helpful, I think. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to bring up. On Sunday, I went to the Miami Shores Community Alliance brunch. Got an opportunity to meet with Mayor Harris and Vice Mayor Marenberg and several of the other officials that we met at the Coastal Mayor's meeting. It was just very nice to meet with them. I was also able to connect with Mayor Cava, and I'm going to try and start setting up a meeting to speak with her about our village needs. So that's going to be happening probably in the next month or two. So I'd like to try and identify some of the, important things that we want to bring to her attention. Let me see. An update on the porta potty issue. I understand that they are going to be moving it, but they are ahead of schedule in construction. So I think that project's gonna be wrapping up in the next couple of weeks, but they are gonna be moving it. So progress there, which is good. For any boards that may be listening and they want help in promoting their events, I'm going to try and get to the Miami Shores Chamber of Commerce meeting. And they expressed to me that we can kind of cross promote our events with their village because they push out to an email list. They post on their website so that they would promote our events. There's a lot of support right now between North Bay Village, Miami Shores, and El Portal in doing community events, trying quad community events. So I think that will help kind of push those in the right direction. So if I can get to that one at the end of March, I can put that Jazz in the Park for April 1st on their radar. So, all right, I think I'm taking up enough of everyone's time. So thanks for listening. And I will
Great.
turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
So I don't have a comment.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Miami Shores publishes a like a newsletter. It's pretty high end. The egret, I think they call it.
Yes.
Oh, came today. I got it today. It happens to be. And so I wondered if they charge for putting the ad in there, but I did see quite a few events listed in there.
They do, I believe it goes to every,
It must because it came to me.
yes, it does, it does. I have it every time.
Make a note to try and ask if I can go and sit there. They apparently they have a board seat for El Portal and for Biscayne Park. So they were just asking if we would come by and fill it.
Cool. That is exciting.
Jonathan, can I ask you one follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
So to your meeting with Representative Wilson, and she said she could use letters from residents
Yes.
asking, is it something we should work on and encourage people to do? And because we did this once before,
Mhm.
early on when there was a comment period, we did go through that and there was emails and we pushed out notices and we got people engaged at a pretty high level. And then I believe a second time when the court cases were going on, it was happening again.
Mm.
Are you suggesting that we should do that? Or are you saying she made it sound like it was kind of a fait accompli and we should just sort of let it go.
The way that she made it sound was if it's going to be 10 or 20 letters, it's not going to do much good. She said, but several hundred might get some attention.
We can get several hundred letters.
If
We can make that happen,
if-
certainly. They're, right, they're, yeah, so there's that organization headed by the guy over in San Souci,
Mhm.
the woman in Keystone Point, I forget their names right now, apologize if they're listening. But, you know, we can also get, we can get 200-300 residents to write letters. There was, people who are really upset about that, and I still get complaints on a very regular basis.
If
My
we,
husband, when we're in the backyard mainly, so there's one.
if
So-
if we can get support in those numbers, I think that she was suggesting that those are the types of numbers we would need to get the secretary.
To get someone's attention. So we need letters addressed to Secretary Buttigieg
Correct.
specifically about this topic.
Yes.
Well, then why don't we, as a group, decide that we want that to happen and ask Mario and staff to get that message out? So, and sort of formalize that and give people a deadline, because if you don't give people a deadline, nothing will happen. Or if you want me to sort of take on the responsibility, or somebody else wants to, of get that message out, agree on a deadline, come up with the address, provide the information. You might even want to draft one of those canned letters that people can pick up and sort of sign.
Yeah.
I know it's not ideal. Ideally it would be someone's own words, but when someone does sign something, it's official, right? So, I mean, if we want to do that, then we should do that. Or it will never happen casually, but we could make that happen if we intend to try to make a difference. Do we think it's going to work? I don't know.
I think it's one of our only options at this point. If we want to continue to try and
Yeah.
make a difference with respect to that issue, that's probably the only way we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah. So how do we want to go about that then?
Well, the mayor that was really leading the fight or the charge, so to speak, on the call was Mayor of Bay Harbor. I could reach out to him and ask if they're organizing something with their residents, because Bay Harbor, North Bay Village was another one, Surfside was another one. They were, Indian Creek was another one, because Indian Creek and Bay Harbor and Surfside, they were the one that kind of funded the entire. Yeah, so if we can reach out to those municipalities, I think, and ask if they're kind of putting a drive together to get residents to get involved and write, I think that it would be helpful to join with them to see what kind of drive or push we actually have. I'd be happy to reach out to them and ask if what they're organizing, see if it's something we could join them on. It's a good start. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
I will make a note to send an email to them this evening when I get home. I would love to. No,
They might even have like a format already, put together for this sort of letter and.
putting a reminder in to do that this evening. So I will send something to them and then I would be happy to report back to everyone on what we get.
Microphones on. Some people aren't directly under the path. I understand, but a lot of the villages, a whole lot of the villages, and those people are really upset by that.
I know sorry. And I know it affects a lot of those municipalities that we just talked about too. They were talking about like buildings shaking with
Yeah.
the planes going overhead. So I know it's important. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Mine, it's very quick. So it was very interesting for me to be part of Thursday's meeting with Mayor Groth. Really put me in perspective how much I don't know about all this water keepers efforts and really what all the neighboring municipalities have been working on. When it came to us, I was able to talk about the stormwater projects we have going on. And Mario was able to meet Anna from the county. She, I believe, was the one involved helping, making sure all the stormwater project was in order. Working very tight with our village and making that happen. So she spoke very greatly of our manager, and that was always wonderful to hear. So I just wanted to mention that. And so that was Thursday, and I was able to assist some of the boards this month, specifically planning and zoning board, it was interesting. There was an item that came up regarding the ordinance on driveways that we recently passed. And there is, they've seen already a couple times, there was kind of a back and forth on something we may want to talk about, which is when the lots are very large, the amount of land that it's taken to actually follow the steps that are provided currently in the driveway, are asking that we diminish our green and we put more concrete. So in that sense, that might be something that we might need to look into. So that was something that caught my attention, and that when it comes to the other boards, I was just happy to participate and ask people to engage. And thank you, Mario, for putting together, again, meeting with the rec center. I was able to meet with ISA to understand better the department, and also we met with the building department, and that was very helpful. And again, this is part of me trying to, from the inside out, really, and from the people that work in this department, really see the structure that we have with the budget that we have. I think it's the only way that we can really have a full understanding of what's going on and hear from the challenges. And, we discuss them here, but hearing it from the people inside as well, because it might seem easier, obviously, when you come from outside, but then when you talk about the systems and the times involved and how things work, then for me, at least, it's very beneficial, because we're going to have to talk about budget soon, and that gives me a better perspective. Thank you, Mario.
Can I ask you a question, Veronica? So the P and Z meeting and the driveway topic, I had a conversation with someone from the board as well.
Yeah.
So that, you're talking about the size of the driveway, the required size of the driveway.
Right.
Yeah, because that's based on, in our code, the size of the driveway is based on the number of bedrooms in a house, which I fought to the bitter end when we passed the driveway ordinance, and that one I did not win. But and that's because we're requiring a driveway of a certain size based on how many bedrooms, not based on how many people or cars, or their desire to even have that big of a driveway.
Yeah.
We created that problem in our code. So we're the ones forcing the issue, and we're over concreting the village as a result. It is a problem. So I'm glad you saw it happening there. Are you planning to bring that back to us and ask us to take a look at
I
that?
think what I'm planning to do next after that meeting, because that's a meeting that I was able to assist. So I would want to sit down with one of our members of the planning board and really get down to the numbers so I can better understand. The conversation was, how do we go about that when the lot is so big? When you're following the code to the T, then you're requiring a bigger concrete size.
That's right.
So that in essence also is requiring the property owner to invest in a larger amount. So
Spend more money than they intended to.
correct. So I think, this is one of those cases that I would just want to very closely understand first, sitting down and draw what the picture of that lot would look like, and then assess what should be done. Something we can bring as a discussion. to.
Okay, I'd be very happy to have you bring that back for a discussion here once you do your due diligence. Thank you for doing that.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our village attorney report.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, I'm happy to report that I have no report.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, managers report. Mr. Manager, could you?
Just, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick items that are not part of the written report. One, as an update for the Porta John, the company that is leasing that to the contractor is scheduled to be picking that up tomorrow. So that should be gone from the village tomorrow. And we will be having a movie night, I believe, on Friday. And ISA is getting everything together, so we encourage everybody to be there as well.
Very good. Okay. Anything to call attention for the written report? Okay. All right, very good. So let's go ahead and move on to item 9, our consent agenda, with the understanding that we have moved 9F and 9G. So our consent agenda now consists of 9A through 9E. Do I have a motion to accept the amended consent agenda as it's been presented?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, short of F and G.
Motion, Commissioner Kennedy. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And can we just take a second, since we reappointed all the people to the boards on consent without discussion, can we just say thanks to them for continuing to volunteer for the village? The board members do fabulous work for us and they do it for free and we appreciate it. So thank you for putting yourself back on the board.
Absolutely. And going through those, we have some very, very qualified and hardworking individuals on those boards, so we appreciate them. All right, so let's go ahead and turn our attentions to 9F and 9G, which are basically tandem items, since we have at least one application that is relevant to both. So 9F is going to be the appointment to the Planning and Design Review Board. Okay, so item 9F, we have one vacancy and we have one applicant, which is Jacob Murphy. Okay. Pardon me. So do we have any specific discussion points that we'd like to talk about with respect to Mr. Murphy's application?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. So first of all, I want to make a general comment about board appointments. So in terms of the board, it's one of the responsibilities of the commission to appoint residents to the boards when they apply to be on the boards. And we have certain qualifications that we look for. It's stated in our charter. It's rather clear the kind of people we want to recruit and encourage to be on the boards. And it's a very serious job. And since I've been a commissioner, I'm 3 years in now, I've taken this position very seriously, and it's kind of disappointed me. I'm not speaking about anyone up here, but it's disappointed me that I felt at times that that responsibility was not taken very seriously, and that anybody who applied just was summarily appointed to a board. And I have that feeling because I, in addition to recruiting a lot of the board members that we have, I also quote interview and vet these applicants. I sit down with people and meet with them and discuss with them their interest in being on a board and their qualifications and what they'd like to work on. There are people here who can tell you about the meetings that I've had with them. And then I'm always very enthusiastic for the people who I support. And I would hope that every commissioner is doing that rather than voting someone through because they were willing to volunteer for the community. It's wonderful that people are willing to volunteer, and I'm grateful for everybody who's willing to help in every way. But it's really important that we find the right people for the right fit on these different boards. And I'm hoping that all of you are taking the time to do that, and you're not voting for people who you don't know, that you haven't had the opportunity to sit down with and vet properly. And if you haven't, we do have the ability to pull things from the agenda and say, look, I'm not quite ready for this vote tonight. I'd rather have the opportunity to sit with this person and talk some more. Just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean we have to push it through. We could table it and move on. So you can vote no and still be grateful and thankful for someone being willing to help the village. But you cannot abstain from a vote. We have to vote yes or no on everything that comes before us. That's the law. So I just hope that we're all taking it really seriously, and I trust that you guys are. Regarding this applicant, I have met with him. He's a very nice gentleman. He's lived in the village just over a year, and he has some credentials that certainly make sense for this position. But he also has stated some views to me personally about things like density and multifamily dwellings and promoting those sorts of changes to our community that are contrary to what is stated in our comp plan and things like that. And I don't necessarily support myself for a future change as well. So while I'm very grateful for his interest in being on this board, I'm not going to vote for him to be on the board tonight. And maybe he'll find another way he could help the village in another capacity or on another board. But I hope that you guys have taken the time to, for all board appointments, that we take the time to take this really seriously, because these boards do make a very important impact on the village, and the quasi judicial boards in particular really have very direct impact on the residents and their finances and what they can do with their home. And in the case of the planning board, the future of our village. That's my comment. Thank you.
The only comment that I'd like to make is that I cannot consider an incomplete application. And this application that I have in front of me has a lot of holes and is incomplete. That's my comment regarding this one that we're on right now.
Okay, I certainly appreciate that view, and the need to understand someone's background and experience. I will say, so with respect to the application that we have here for planning and design, it's my understanding that this is this individual's first choice. And the second choice is the Code Compliance Board, for which we have one opening on code compliance. And Michael, who was here, who spoke publicly, I know him well. I know that he's a practicing attorney. We went to the same law school. So I think that he would be a good addition to that board, certainly. I think at least for that appointment, I would vote to approve Michael to that board.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought we were only speaking on the one at a
Well,
time because they're different items. So
you're right. No,
I don't want anyone to think I was kind of slighting Michael because I wholeheartedly support him being on the code compliance board. I've met with him and discussed it several times. I've been working on that one for a while. And so I'm very, very happy to see him on the agenda tonight. And I worked with Shantae to make sure his application was on tonight's agenda because I would like him appointed. So since we're doing both at one time, I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
I was kind of treating it again tandem just because we have a single applicant for both board appointments. And I think if we are going to consider Mr. Murphy for the planning and design board, then I think that we would, not speaking for everyone, but if you'd agree that I think that we would be comfortable with appointing Michael for the and I don't want to pronounce his last name wrong, but Lynett, Lynett. Apologies if he was still here, I would ask. But I don't think that there would be any issues with appointing him. So then what we would really be discussing is whether to appoint Mr. Murphy to the other board. So
Want to wrap up code compliance?
I think
Motion for that?
I would think that we could do it that way. If
I'm
Make a motion
sorry.
To appoint Michael Lynott to the.
I'm sorry. One moment. Mr. Attorney, do we need to read the resolution in first before we're accepting the motion? It was pulled from consent.
Resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, approving the selection and appointment of a board member to the Code Compliance Board, providing for an effective date.
Like to make a motion that we appoint Michael Lynott to the code compliance board.
okay, motion, Commissioner Kennedy, second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So if we're that motion passes, that takes care of that item 9G. So turning back to 9F, if we're not, at least at this point, if we're not comfortable voting on this appointment, I'd be happy to move it to the next meeting if we want to reach out to this individual and ask that he submit a completed application for our consideration.
In my view, if you have an application and you don't complete it and you turn it in, I don't know why I need to go after him to complete the application.
Okay.
I don't understand that as a process.
We can just, may I ask a question to Ed, Jonathan?
Sure.
Can we vote on this? And if it votes down, can he apply again?
Don't know any reason why he cannot.
Okay, so
If it's
okay. So he could listen to the meeting and understand that some people had apprehensions about his application and he could choose to resubmit it. And we could discuss them again.
Mayor, or you could ask if there's a motion to approve this resolution, and if you don't get a motion, then obviously it doesn't pass.
Understood. Well, why don't we do that then? Thank you, Mr. Attorney. So considering the conversation we just had, is there a motion to approve 9F as it is presented to us now? Okay, hearing no motion, the item will be fails. Thank you. And we can reconsider if a new application is put forth. Okay. So we'll move on. That takes care of items nine F and G, so we can move on to ordinance in section 10. The first of which is going to be item 10A, ordinance 2023-02. Mr. Attorney, would you mind please reading it onto the record for us?
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending section 8.4, property maintenance of chapter 8, environmental management of the Land Development Code, of the Village of Biscayne Park, amending property maintenance standards, providing for inclusion in the code and scrivener's errors, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Do we have any public comment on items 10A?
I think the attorney's already on this question, but in reading through the ordinance.
I'm sorry, sir, your name and address for the record.
1107 118th Street.
Thank you.
It indicates that the civil citation process will be used to enforce this. And in reading through the various code enforcement sections, the civil citation really is never mentioned as a process. There are several terms thrown around in our code. The administrative citations are the section that specifically has a direct fine that can be imposed immediately. That's pretty clear. It gets a little, and then there's something called a notice of violation, okay? But civil citations are only mentioned as the way that codes sections are enforced. But there's actually no civil citation process identified in our code. So, and my concern is that 8.4 is not intending that this administrative citation process be used for this. And it doesn't look like it is, but I'd like us all to be sure about that before, is this second reading or first reading this?
Second.
Okay, well, I think maybe this might be more correct by saying notice of violation process, because that's what's mentioned in our code. In association with administrative citations, it said that codes can be enforced by, a code enforcement officer has the ability to enforce certain things by administrative citation or a notice of violation. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you.
Eric, Commissioners, this is the first I've heard of it, obviously. So, you know, what I recommend
Exist.
is just go ahead and let's get this thing passed on second reading. And Val and I will check and make sure that we're consistent throughout. Mr. Keys just brought that to my attention this evening. So you give us an opportunity to check and come back to you. If there are any amendments that need to be done, we'll bring them to you.
Thank you.
That does sound correct, and I agree with the attorney on there. I don't think that changes the overall advertisement or anything, so I think we're okay. But just to also clarify, civil citation is existing language within the code. It wasn't changed. It's in the code right now, and it reads, enforcement of any of the above violations shall be through the civil citation procedure. But notice of violation or reference to the code procedure, I think would be the correct way to do it as well.
Okay.
So it's cleaning up further code that's been there for decades.
Sure. Okay. So then, as I understand it, Mr. Attorney, we can approve it as it's on our second reading, approve it as it's been written and that
Amended.
and amended. Yes, thank you. And you and Valerie can check for us to make sure that it's consistent so we can clear up any ambiguities.
That's right. And if we need to bring a separate ordinance back to you in order to clean up that language, that's what. And adopt this.
The intent's not going to change and your title's not going to change. So that's what really matters here tonight.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. So with that understanding then, with the proposal, I guess the amended proposal that we have, following public comment and following the proposal of our attorney, can we just request a motion now in a second to approve the ordinance with the understanding that the attorneys will bring it back to us if there are
I'm
inconsistencies?
sorry, Mr. Mayor, and just for the record, because we didn't ask if there was any comment on Zoom,
Please.
although I don't see any, but just for the record, if there's anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment, please select the raise hand icon on the bottom toolbar. Mr. Mayor, seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, so then let's do that. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance 2023-02 in its second reading? With the understanding that it will be brought back to us by our attorneys if there are ambiguities that need to be cleared, and if they are significant, they will be brought back in an ordinance.
Motion to approve ordinance 2023-02.
Commissioner Kennedy, motion, second?
Second.
Commissioner Rivera, second. So can we get a roll call vote, please?
Well, we need to have a
All
discussion.
right, is there any, I apologize. Do we have any discussion items for this?
I do. Anybody else? I'm jumping in all the time. Okay, I
Go
have
ahead.
two quick things, Jonathan. I as in Indiana. Scroll down to that. This is the temporary exterior holiday decorations. We discussed this last time. Valerie made the changes that we requested. But Jonathan, I had in my notes that you specifically wanted her to look into to see if there was some religious exemptions or something that you were concerned that there might be a religious implication to this, and you asked her to look into that. I don't see anything here, and she's not here to ask.
So I read, in reading the minutes from that meeting, before we came here tonight, I did see that there was a comment from her that she would look into it. If I remember correctly, I think she said that she did not believe it would be a problem, but she would check. I don't know if we want to just accept the fact that there are no comments, that she did look into it and that there are none.
I'm just reminding everyone that we
I'm
left
happy
it
to
there.
put it on the record.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We did in fact look into this, and we don't believe that this is objectionable, from a religious or any other standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you for that. The other thing, my other comment is H is in Harry. This is the little paragraph that we kind of tore up a little bit. We took out driveways from there because they're handled elsewhere, and we looked at other surfaces and how they're handled. The number that's in here, driveways have a 50% deterioration amount before, which triggers something having to be done. But this section still has 25% more of the exposed surface crack deteriorated chipped. So I thought that we were going to make that consistent. We were going to remove driveways and because they're handled somewhere separately, but use that same 50%. And I can't remember, I don't want to speak for someone, but I thought one of you had an issue with 25 being too strict. Because of that, what it's saying is 25% is the trigger here, but it's 50% for driveways. So this is more strict in terms of surfaces.
No, we discussed it about the percentages, increasing the percentages for the roof.
Yeah, that got corrected.
I saw that right here.
I'm not suggesting this is a mistake. I'm just pointing out that I thought it was going to be changed to 50. My notes could be wrong, but I also thought, I remember it being consistent with the driveway language, which is 50. 25% is, that's pretty tight. I remember that was part of the conversation too. Yeah.
The safety.
Steps and all of that. Yeah.
So that- so that we might be looking for my notes.
This seems really kind of tight to, and I do understand what you're saying. And I remember we had a conversation about safety issues and stuff.
So how do we go about that? So.
I mean, we can change things. If we wanted to change it to 50, we could do it right now and vote to approve it with the change. We're allowed to make changes at second reading.
As long as it doesn't affect the title, and this would not affect.
Correct.
I'd just point out that the subsection immediately above deals with painting and stuff, and that has a
Right.
25%.
Right. That's not that we kind of made a separation between these are all surfaces and that was walls and painting and stuff like that and how awful that looks from the street. So if anybody wants to support changing that to 50, I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention, but it's still there at 25.
I'm trying to remember if we wanted to move it to 50. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I think we have a comment. I think we have a comment.
Yes,
Your permission.
please, yes.
The section is talking about keeping things safe. Okay, you ought to leave it at that. And just take out the stuff about percentage. If you have a wooden deck that has a 3-foot hole in it, it's unsafe. You shouldn't wait till 25% of the deck is deteriorated such that somebody might fall through it. You know, there needs to be, it's pretty clear when things are unsafe. Big hole in a deck, big hole in a patio. The trip
I don't think
hazard.
the code says that. It says the word and is in there. It says it must be maintained in safe condition and must be repaired when 25% in disrepair. So it's two separate things. So it's saying if it's 25%, it's saying if it's 25%, I'm talking to the commission up here. It's saying if it's 25% or more, or whatever number we would slot in there, that triggers something has to be done. But overall, it also has to be safe. So if there was something unsafe about that, the code officer could say that's an unsafe condition and still cite it. Am I correct, Ed?
Sorry.
Right.
I mean, it says every walkway, sidewalk, deck, or other paved surface shall be maintained in a safe condition and must be repaired when 25% or more of any exposed surface is cracked, deteriorated, or chipped.
The second portion is more about aesthetics, which we acknowledged in our last meeting.
Separate things.
And the
It's-
first portion is about safety,
Yeah. And that's
and the
what we're
second
saying,
portion is
tile-
aesthetics.
Half the tile of your porch is, it's crumbling and in pieces. It does not necessarily may represent a safety concern, but more of an aesthetic and maintenance concern. I don't know, again, so what's the next step? 35.
Let me ask you, since I brought it up, let me ask you this. Who has an interest, who says keep it at 25? And who says change it to 50?
Yeah.
Anybody want to change it to
It's
50?
too constrictive, and if I'm not recall, that's why we had this conversation at the time, and to keep it consistent to what the code read on the part above when we were talking about the roof, and we were saying 50% is easier to assess at what 25% might be.
So you say change it to 50.
Beat me to it, but I would be in favor of moving it up to 50.
You say?
Same.
I do too.
I recall that being.
Okay, so I can simply amend my motion to approve this item and ask to amend, to change with that, to approve with that amendment. So Jonathan, may I?
Okay, yes, please.
I'd like to change my motion to approve ordinance 2023-02 with the change in the item we were just talking about, which is H under number what? 8.4.31, letter H as in Harry,
Right.
change the 25% figure to 50%.
And
Second,
second, all right, is there any further discussion on this? Okay, and can we call for a vote on the ordinance as amended?
aye.
Aye.
This has to be a roll
It's a
call.
roll call.
Mayor Grove.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Amsler,
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Aye.
Commissioner Olivera,
Aye.
Mayor Ordinance number 2023-02 approved as amended with the change to item 8.4.3.1, letter H, changing the number from 25% to 50%.
In addition to our attorneys looking to see if there's any inconsistencies with the language that was brought up during public.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. That was item 10A. So let's turn our attention to item 10B, ordinance 2023-03, budget amendment. Mr. Attorney, would you mind please reading this onto the record for us?
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance number 2022-09 to transfer funds from the village's reserve to the administration line item expenditures and further budget amendments to the capital projects fund, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Okay, do we have any public comment on item 10B? Seeing none here, do we have any on Zoom?
If anybody on Zoom would like to make a public comment, please hit the raise hand icon on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Mr. Mayor, I see none.
Okay, thank you. So can we please move to, Mr. Manager, your discussion of this ordinance, please?
Sure, and I'll ask our finance consultant, Paul Winklejohn, to step to the mic in case there's any questions. As Mayor and Commission, as stated in the memo, there were a couple of items that have popped up that were unaccounted for. And I'll go from bottom to top here because I think it's the easiest explanation. With the strategic plan moving forward and CITT approving a project for traffic data collection, we are asking to move the $18,656 that was attributed to that within our capital funds from capital funds into the general fund administration budget, creating a line item to pay for the strategic plan. Next, recently we had the log cabin had a fire inspection of its sprinkler system. It failed on multiple areas. The village had to go in and make several repairs to the backflow gauge, the backflow valves, the pipes, the monitoring system, the sprinkling system, as well as cause various inspections until we got a green tag, which we do have now. That money, after the various quotes that I got and the various totals come out to about $7,581 with 45 cents. I used money from the administration budget for that. It was an immediate need, obviously. And so this is just replenishing that line item. The funds would be coming from the unassigned general fund balance. And then last, and I think more of the bigger one, our insurance company, Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, excuse me. They did an audit of our workman's comp insurance, which looks at our payroll, what people are making, how many employees we have, as well as other work-related injuries and things like that happen. As a result of that audit for, I believe it was fiscal year 2021, if I'm not mistaken, Paul, the premium is actually higher than what we had based on the information that they received from us. So it was an adjustment of 32,615, which comes out being approximately about 40 to 45% overall of what we traditionally pay. And so this is to reconcile that as well. There is money within the general fund balance. No mistake here. It's one of those, give us your information. Here's the information we have. They quoted us on the premium. Then when they audited all the financial documents and everything, the information that came back was different than what the premium was done on. And so they made those adjustments. And that covers everything. If you'd like, Paul's here to answer any questions, and I'm available as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, so do I have a motion or a second to approve ordinance 2023-03 for the first reading at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, second. Okay, let's move to commission discussion on this item. It's my understanding that the increase, the approximate of $32,000 increase, this is needed to maintain coverage. Is that right?
Paul, you can probably explain it a little bit better than I can. Just bring it up to, yeah, yep. You're good. Yeah, it's on.
Test.
Yep.
All right. Yes, very typical workers' comp. It comes at you 2 years later. And you have to adjust for it. If you know you have a very significant, sorry to say something like a death or something on your record, you would start to encumber a number because you can anticipate this kind of increase. In your situation, you had unknown but minor changes in health, but also when you have significant pay increases over 2 or 3 years, that you can encumber for that. These were small enough that they weren't enough for the auditor to say we should encumber them or us to identify it. So it just accumulated. Very typical.
And this increase represents coverage for the upcoming year?
Actually, it would have been charged in 2021 and 2022. They cash their check when you give it to them. They don't care. We can't put it back in those budgets in reverse. It's too late for an amendment for those budgets. So we have to book it all this year.
Okay, so we can anticipate this number going forward then?
Correct. Well, not exactly. It will adjust back down,
Okay, okay.
ideally.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, let's hope. It's always a moving target.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this item?
No, I come from the insurance world. I understand what happened here. And, it'll happen again, right? We have a budget every year that we discuss. Things change. Insurance premium is certainly going to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. So regarding the strategic plan project, this is just putting money into the proper department and fund so we can do that. That's a money shuffle. And Paul, this is going to give us greater visibility on that rather than having it just dumped into the department. Okay.
That's an
So-
audible thumbs up. Yes.
Okay, so I got it. Now regarding the workman's comp thing, I understand. I mean, I'm not an insurance expert, but I understand the explanation of what happened. Should we, moving forward, given that we're taking a $32,000 hit here in out of our reserve to cover this, should we, I guess the question is to Paul, should we anticipate this likelihood or possibility every year and budget a little bit more every year? So we're ready for it if it happens, because if it doesn't happen, then that money we budget rolls into the reserve. And then basically we're saving for the day that it does happen.
That's philosophical, to be honest. This is the most transparent way to do it, and it's small enough where it doesn't affect your macro decision-making throughout the budget process.
Or could we put it in a reserved fund for that? So
You
so it's
could.
in the fund and we've reserved it and earmarked it. So if it doesn't happen, no one takes the money, but at least we're kind of planning for the day that it would happen and we're ready for it. And we're not here taking money, because what we're doing right now is taking money out of our savings account and for all intents and purposes.
Right.
But we'd be taking money out of that special savings account that we set aside. I don't know. Or is that overthinking something?
For this amount of money, it's too
Okay.
much to worry about. It's not enough to worry about. If this were to give you a sense of scale in the
Mhm.
$100,000 range,
Mhm.
that exactly what you're thinking. But in this, it's not nominal, but it isn't large enough to fret. First of all, you should congratulate yourselves that that your manager and you bring this to yourselves this time of year. Not everybody does that. Many municipalities wait for all their adjustments and they do it right after October, and and
Mhm.
yours is a little different because you do as an ordinance. Many finance directors adopt it upon the adoption of the budget. They'll clean up these
Got it.
types of shifts. That's a lot to keep track of. So I like what you do, and it's more transparent. So my lean right now is what you do.
Just bringing it up just in case we need to mind it a little bit better. And for the future, I'm always thinking about what's going to happen when someone looks back in a couple of years, and no one remembers what happened. And, because we go through that a lot too. It's like we look back and go, what happened? What was that about? No one quite remember what happened. So
Right.
it's only $32,000. It's not a nominal amount, but it's not huge either.
Yeah, to dig a little bit into workers' comp, if you were restructuring, for instance, I'm being hypothetical, and move some people into job descriptions rather, innocently, you could trigger a much different workers' comp rate coefficient, and that we need to be mindful of that. And we would want to be smart enough to bring that up at the time.
Mhm.
You know, so, hey, this is a cost factor of changing a title and changing an office setting. You can put there's, you know, coefficient into the line of duty coefficient, and now you're paying a lot more money. So you want to be honest, but careful. As an
And
example.
Yep, I'm cool with it the way it is. Thank you.
All right, is there any other discussion for this item, this ordinance? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mayor Groth.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Amsler.
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Olivera,
Aye.
Mayor Ordinance number 2023-03, amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Ordinance number 2022-09 passes first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Wrapping up 10B, moving on to 10C, our ordinance number 2023-04. Mr. Attorney, can you please read it onto the record for us?
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Ordinance number 2022-09, transfer funds from the village's unassigned fund balance appropriation reserve to the budget amendments to the building fund, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is first read.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Do we have any public comment on item 10C? Seeing none here present, do we have any on Zoom?
Again, if anybody on Zoom would like to make a public comment, please hit the raise hand icon on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Mr. Mayor, I see none.
Mr. Manager, would you please discuss this item for us?
Mr. Mayor, I know that I've spoken to each and every one of you individually on this item, but for the introduction of the item here, I'm going to ask Paul to kind of go over it a little bit, because I think he'll be a little bit more concise than I would be.
Oh, don't underestimate yourself. You can always do it. Obviously, the memo speaks for itself. It explains that this is housekeeping of Finance 101 for us. We made a decision by obligation to create a fund. When you strip one piece out, you have to bring its friends with it. The auditor went back through it and found all the fees. When we would budget just to give you a little background, when we would budget for building department, we would only focus on the obvious fees, and there were several more. And so this audit went back through, or the auditor went back through back to 2016, all the way through to 2021. As in I don't know if you saw the spreadsheet, which we actually went through it, and we used the similar methodology that we use in our solid waste fund for that assessment. Who pays a little bit of this indirectly or share of their responsibilities, and you can be as elaborate or as simplistic as you choose. In your situation, we recommended this ratio of shared expenses. The net effect of it is that if you were really looking and taking money out of your general fund for the building department, it was creating more revenue to the bottom line. And we've accumulated that to the $366,000 range. And so that basically belongs to its house in the building fund, to use the word house, I guess.
And to add to that, throughout this entire process, I have been in contact with our auditors to make sure that it is a process that they will agree to, that they accept. They think that this is the best way to do this. As with the other item, a lot of these transactions are prior years, before even my time. And so this is more of a housekeeping. I guess technically what it is in those prior years, we're saying this money is owed to this account. This money is owed, this money is owed. But again, because we're physically moving the money now, then you're seeing that realization in this fiscal year, which is what's caused the budget transfer and the budget amendment now. It's something that I wanted to bring to the commission as soon as we saw, because when we do go into the budget season, we talked about, hey, in our general fund balance, we have X amount of dollars. But there's a certain segment, which is, yes, you have X amount of dollars, but this amount you can't really touch because it's dedicated for the building department. When I first got here, completely understood the methodology. I said, no, we're going to separate that money so that there's never a confusion. There's never a time where we use the money inappropriately, purposely, or accidentally. So we separated that account. And so this is just that second component of separating those monies completely from each other.
And just to remind everybody that one of the reasons we created this fund is because there's a requirement. I can't remember where it lives, the requirement, but that your building fund has to balance its own revenue with its expenses. And so that's why they took a much bigger cut into the other revenue sources. So we returned the favor by taking a more appropriate cut of the overhead. And it still left a balance. So we have to adjust for that balance.
The other component of the Budget Amendment Commission is, as part of the current budget, we anticipated a shortfall within the building department because of the new contract, the new revenue sharing and things like that. That also caused the elimination of the digitalization project this year because we didn't have funds. So this budget amendment adds that project back in for the remainder of this fiscal year to finalize that one room that we were working on. And then next year, as we present a new budget, you will see that project come back maybe a little bit stronger so that we can start hopefully finalizing those over at the rec center. I think the rec center probably has the equivalent of about 3 rooms. There's 2 rooms, but those rooms are much bigger than what we had at Village Hall. So I just say it's 3 rooms. And so you'll start seeing that as well as any other expenses or anything, and you'll start seeing a fully balanced budget within the building department without any surplus.
Okay, thank you both for the background information on the ordinance. So at this time, I'll request a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2023-05 in its first reading.
Motion to approve.
No, not yet. So motion from Vice Mayor Amsler. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Oliveira. So we'll move on to discussion. Is there any discussion on this item?
We did good.
No, I'm just setting back for a second. I do have a couple of things I want to ask about. So, okay, so this is a really big hit on reserves, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, it just is a big hit on our reserves. So I have a couple of things. So Mario, you're going to use money, some of the found money to work to make a significant take a significant step in the digitization program. Could you use more than that? Could you get more done? Or are you under a time constraint? You couldn't actually get more done?
I think because it's only we have half the year left, basically. I don't think that
This is going to keep them busy, and this is
for the rest of this year.
but
Correct.
next year we hopefully will see it in there again and
Yes.
work towards completion of that completely.
That's what I'm hoping for.
We won't be working out of milk crates maybe a year from now. Be nice. Okay.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Okay, so I guess to Paul, is there anything else in there that we should be looking at moving out? Because this sort of came up because the auditors were looking at something else. Are there any other funds that should be pulled out and assigned somewhere else?
Meaning pulled out of the general fund and
Out of
into
the- out of
somewhere in
the-
the building or vice
Yeah,
versa.
exactly.
I don't think I would ask the auditors to look more closely ever. I think they do a great job, and they really are shrewd at looking back at every detail. You're small enough where they really, they didn't miss anything.
Okay. I ask because when something like this comes up, it makes me wonder, what else did we miss? What else is in there?
It's nothing was missed. It was just defined for the first time.
I understand. So,
Yeah,
okay.
the piece that you could, just like the solid waste, you could make, if you needed to address this money, you could be more aggressive with your overhead. Yes, clearly, you could put a building charge in there. They work out of City Hall. You could get out of Village Hall. You could
Lease.
get a lot of, but you start to get fuzzy when you are that aggressive in terms of historical logic and methodology. In this business, we like our methodology on assessments. Ad valorem is obvious, but assessments and fees to have a real clean number that's easy to measure. When you start getting creative and too aggressive, you pay for it because somebody will argue it or you'll look foolish that you were,
Okay,
you
I'm
know,
just
that
asking,
kind of
it
thing.
begs the
But-
question, what else? might
Yeah,
be
so
there?
To your
I always
point-
try to shoot right at simple, obvious and
Okay.
defendable.
To your point, Commissioner Kennedy, the other funds like the CITT funds were always separated. So we don't have that same type of issue in that area. So
There's nothing else that was kind of all blended in there that we should consider pulling out.
not that I'm
That
aware
was
of.
the
I
only
think
one.
this is the only.
On the
fund
other
that we
funds that are already
created.
set up.
Right.
I think they hit it right. Yeah.
Okay, then my other question is, and I talked to Mario about this and Paul real quickly when he came in. Last year, guys, we, for the first time, set up an emergency reserve. So it's an assigned fund. All of our savings, if we'll call it, was all just in one big account and it was unassigned and could be used for anything. So for the first time last year, the previous commission we picked a percentage and the percentage was 50% of the reserve that we would assign in a reserve fund that's untouchable except for a case of emergency. So we started saving for an emergency for real, like in protecting ourselves from a commission doing something silly with our money. That percentage was a percentage of the general fund, but now that money is being taken out, the amount that we set aside, and that was by ordinance, wasn't it? The
It was
amount-
through the budget process,
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
did that as an
As
ordinance.
an ordinance, the money that was set aside was 50%, but now that money is being removed, it's greater than 50%. So do we want to adjust, since we're here in an ordinance, so this would be the time to do it, do we want to adjust that amount back down to 50% of what's left? Or do we want to just somehow memorialize what happened? So looking back, someone won't wonder, well, what happened? They have an ordinance here that's 50% and the numbers don't add up properly because of this. These are the kind of things that you look back on and wonder what happened. So I'm just putting the topic out there and I'd like to hear Paul and Mario address that, but I don't like things being sloppy or looking like something happened that no one can ever remember or explain.
I would, through the mayor, if it's okay, I would not recommend reducing the assigned general fund balance. Let it sit at 1.7. You know, if we get hit with a storm or something happens, at the end of the day, we could always use the entire fund balance. But we already have something dedicated. And so I would rather have that more than less overall, which is why in the fiscal impact in the memo, it talks about that the unassigned fund balance is what's being reduced and that the other one basically stays as is. That would be my recommendation. I don't know, Mr. Attorney, if it's just adding a whereas the assigned fund balance will stay at the 50% of what was originally during the budget. I don't know if we can just add a sentence to memorialize it and make it very simple. But I wouldn't recommend reducing the actual dollar amount.
Before he answers, do you mind if I?
Please, yes, I'm sorry.
To
Go
what
ahead,
you're saying?
Paul, of course.
You've also just done that in your last ordinance. You just moved money out of the reserve fund into an active fund. So in theory, you're going to always have that situation anytime you have an adjustment. So I would establish the precedent right now that you and you can add it to your resolutions, which is what we're recommending, that this does not affect the formula for the adopted budget reserve, and just keep that precedent in, because it'd be madness.
Well, I'll agree with that. And I'm totally cool with the emergency reserve being higher, because remember, if you guys were following along during budget season last year, that our goal is to have the assigned reserve be much higher. This was the first time we did it. It was our first crack at it. We picked that number to set that much money in an emergency fund. But our long-term goal was we should be, Mario, the financial person you brought in, suggested that we should have 100% of our annual budget in an emergency reserve. That's the ultimate goal, and we're at 50%, right?
Just to clarify, it's to have 100% in the general fund balance overall, right? So if our budget is 3.7, ideally we would want 3.7 within the fund balance. Then we got into the discussion of, okay, well, the assigned for the emergency fund, where should that be? And overall, looking at what it's cost the village in the past, it costs about 1.1. So
Cleanup.
right, just all that cleanup. So we wanted to make sure, and it was almost 4 years before we got anything from FEMA back. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough in there that we can pay for that, knowing that the prices have gone up. I will tell you, ideally, the unassigned, I would still want at 100% of our operating budgets, because if you.
Separate from this, you mean?
Yeah, I
Sorry,
mean,
100%.
for me, ideally, and I know Paul might be like, okay, you're adding a lot more, but here's my rationale. This is how I think. If we need to use that and we use up the 1.7 completely, right? Then the only thing left in our general fund balance is the unassigned. And then what happens if now there's a market correction on property values? And all of a sudden our expenditures are higher than what we're going to receive in. Well, the unassigned general fund balance is what's going to help make up that difference, at least that first year. And hopefully that can carry us over where things kind of balance out. Now, what happens if there's another storm on back-to-back years and that happens? We're in big trouble. So the more money that we have in our general fund balance, the more protection the village is going to have. We're not going to be completely insulated from everything that might possibly happen. That's not realistic. But I think it's a good goal to try to continue to increase that general fund balance so that it's matching our operating costs as much as we possibly can.
And also having the separate emergency reserve.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but where we are realistically right now is, listen, if we can get a general fund balance where both totals, pretty close to our total operating, and then we split that up, I think that's very, very healthy. I know I'm going an extra step, but I'm okay wanting to go that extra step because it protects you. It protects your community.
So
I'd be
back to my original question then. So how do we memorialize this? Because in essence, we're making a change that is changing something that we approved.
So
The percentage.
if I understood Paul correctly, and Ed, I know I'm just itching to get you in. I think Paul, I think your overall recommendation is these budget amendments and these ordinances are memorializing why we're moving the money, when and why. And then during the budget process, you can reestablish that 50% rule, or even if you want to change it because now the assigned is going to have more money, then you can kind of do that during that ordinance for the budget.
Do it
Now,
once.
You're
Just
cool
do
with
it once,
that?
yeah.
You're cool with the resolution being being enough to memorialize it?
That's the ordinance. These are two ordinances that
Two ordinances.
memorialize it. I agree with the.
Okay, but it's separate from the budget, but you're okay with that. Okay. Just want to make sure that we're nice and tidy all the time.
And
Um,
if anyone has any, reservation about, you start the process with a projection to begin with, because you have fees and expenses from 2 months before, 2 months after you upped your budget that go back and change your balance. So it is a moving target, regardless of what we say or do here today. So you couldn't control it if you wanted to.
Okay.
So.
And my last, okay, I just want to make sure we're tying things up with little bows on top. My last comment is, how does this all impact, Mario, the permit fee schedule that we just approved? Because we just approved all of these changes, and that's what funds the building department. Now we've just had a big influx of money into the building department that we weren't anticipating. So we just increased revenue, and now we're increasing revenue again.
I think next year you'll see a lot more expenditures in the building department that we typically keep out of because we know that we can't afford it.
Like other departmental expenses.
Right. So last fiscal year, in my first budget, we had a portion of the code department and their salaries being accounted for within the building department because we knew that the revenue that we had could absorb that, which is just general practice. Employees work within the building department that aren't fully assigned there. There's my time and my staff. So essentially where the building department is hiring us at a certain percentage to resolve. Exactly, they are. But we typically in this fiscal year, we didn't do any of that because we knew we were going to be short from the beginning. So it's like, okay, well, the general fund would just kind of take that bigger hit, and the building fund, you know, we're going to try to scrape by. I think from where I'm sitting right now, I think next fiscal year, you're going to have a lot of different options within the building department. You'll still end up receiving a balanced budget. So I don't think that's going to affect the permitting or the permit fees that are now into effect. Remember, even some of those permit fees, they're actually reduced from what they were prior to. So it wasn't just an increase across the board on anything, because it's now percentage based and it's project based. When we showed some of the examples of existing permits, those permits were less than what they are. So I think moving forward from a permit fee, we are in good condition. However, just to give you what would happen if we continue to have these type of surpluses and we don't have the type of expenses, because we got all the projects we wanted, we did everything we possibly could, but we still have $100,000 or more or whatever it could be of a surplus. Law dictates you have to reduce your permit fees so that you no longer have that kind of surplus.
So I guess my straightforward question to you is, given this little windfall here, money shuffling windfall, and the new permit fees, you're confident that we're not going to be
No.
over increasing
No.
our revenue for the department,
No,
the risk of charging reps?
no, you'll be presented with a balanced budget for the department.
Okay.
You'll have more
That's
projects.
because these two things kind of came back to back, and I want to make
Yeah.
sure, like, ooh, let's make sure we didn't
Yeah.
compensate.
No, I don't think we overcompensated. And like I mentioned, you'll see where something, that digitalization project, for example, of getting those permits and scanning them, because they're all paper basically for forever and a day. We were thinking, hey, this might be, you know, anywhere between a 5 to 10 year project, because we can only do so much at a time with the money that we had. Well, all of a sudden, we can now put that money in full force into it. Another aspect which I haven't brought up, because of some time that I needed to take away, and the building department, I didn't have enough time to add the item onto the agenda as promised by the commission, and I've kind of explained that to you all. We have a property within the village that we're thinking of, okay, if we need to take this to the next step and possibly demolish, where would we even get the money to fund that? Well, here it is, you know, so that becomes an avenue as well. So I think the commission and the community will see a presentation where during the budget season for this department that will start balancing it out. And we think, wow, this is a big windfall. When we're in budget, I think we're going to be like, wow, that's already gone. Like, we don't have any more of that surplus to kind of fall back on. Because for us, it's a lot, but it's not really.
That you'll now be accounting for properly.
We'll be moving, exactly. We'll be moving forward and we'll try to catch up on all the projects that have been put off for so many years. You know, so I think once we put all that in front of you all and you all make those decisions, you'll see that it's a balanced budget and there's a lot being done.
These projects, like the digitization, which I'm very glad to hear that the windfall, so to speak, is going to result in getting that done. That's fantastic news. So silver lining in this, I guess. But so the idea is that the projects that we're going to be completing using this money will draw it back down to effectively zero. And then we will see the benefits, so to speak, of the permitting process that we just approved take effect, and it'll be within kind of the projections that were presented.
Correct. Yeah, you'll see all of that. And the digitalization project is more of, you know, we run into several issues, not only within the building, but in the code where, you know, hey, this is a violation and we don't have the records are somewhere. And then suddenly the resident comes up and says, look, I have the signed final permit. And we're like, oh yeah, it wasn't in our files. Right now, this gives us an option to kind of just search that through a PDF file as opposed to let me go to the rec center and hopefully I find the box with the right address and maybe it's in there. Right. So it just makes it a lot easier. And adding that to our software system that makes everything electronic, which is a big push within the state. There's even new laws being thrown out this year, not thrown out, but put into the mix because they want to add on top of what was already done 2 years ago, which is a little out there. But I think all of this starts coming into play, and I think we are in a very good position to kind of be in compliance with state law very quickly and still meet the needs of the community.
Yeah, I know there's a significant importance to proper record keeping. So I'm glad to hear that this will be used to attack that. One thing that I just wanted to clear up, that I know that we had discussed when we went over this item, but I just wanted to make sure, and with having the benefit of Paul here with us, do we have a specific time period in which this balance, this approximately 366, needs to be drawn down to zero before we're penalized, so to speak? Or is it enough that we have a plan in place that we are showing how we are drawing it down to avoid any type of carryover penalty?
So, the good thing with the state is that they're not always as fast as we are when it comes to audits and doing these budget amendments and things like that. And I'll give you an example. And Mayor, you received this letter from the state auditor, where they sent us a letter from an audit. I want to say almost 3 years now. They're like, hey, you have back-to-back findings about not using CITT money correctly. You need to write a letter explaining how you're going to do it. And I remember, and I talked to Paul, and I was like, Paul, we already fixed this like 2 years ago. We have everything done. He's like, yeah, we just got to send them that letter. And I was like, okay.
I just got this letter, I think maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I brought it to his attention. I said, wait a minute, what
What's
happened
going
with
on?
this? He's like, that was done forever ago.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're going to send us a letter, not next year, but probably the year after, saying, hey, there's excess of money. And all we do is show, yes, and we're at zero, and this is how it was done, and everything is a balanced budget. And then it go, oh, okay, good job. And they kind of just mark it off.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a deadline by which this needed to be drawn down so we could avoid any potential issues with that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a specific deadline.
Okay.
I think
It's
Mario
through the
hit it
audit
perfectly.
process.
Perfect, appreciate it. So coming back to the item that we were discussing, and directed to our attorney. So just to be certain, we're comfortable with the ordinances as they're presented, memorializing this process to document it for our budget season. There's no further action that we should be taking.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Sounds like we have a consensus on that. If there's no other questions or issues that we want to discuss, I'm glad we have some closure there. Okay, so do we have any further discussion on the ordinance as it's presented to us? Seeing none? Okay, I don't believe that it's been amended in any fashion, so since we've concluded, we have our motion and our second. I will ask our clerk to call for roll.
Mayor Grove,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Amsler,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Olivera,
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance number 2023-04 passes first reading, passes first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. I just want to memorialize the concept that is the policy on the balance of the reserve and the emergency fund, that it's a once a year, and we'll just assume that going forward, and my staff will know that. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Okay, that concludes item 10C. Let's move to ordinance item 10D, which is ordinance 2023-05. Mr. Attorney, would you please read it onto the record for us?
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending the Biscayne Park Comprehensive Plan to add a property rights element as required by and in conformity with Section 163.31776I, Florida Statutes 2021, providing for inclusion in the comprehensive plan and scrivener's errors, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is first reading, and if you would like, Mayor, I can summarize what we're trying to do here.
If you could, please, I would appreciate it.
2 years ago, the Florida legislature adopted an amendment in this section 163.3177 to require every municipality in every county to amend their comp plan in order to provide a property rights element. That's what this is. We've taken it directly from the statute. We've done this in in a bunch of other jurisdictions. This isn't the first time I've seen this ordinance, but it's consistent with other ordinances that have been done. And we can't amend our comp plan until we amend this provision.
Understood. I'll save it for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Mr. Manager, was there any discussion on, from you on this item?
I think the attorney summed it up very quickly and eloquently. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2023-05.
Motion to approve?
Vice Mayor Amsler, second.
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Oliveira, thank you. So let's move on to discussion. Very quickly, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none? Any on Zoom?
If anybody on Zoom has a public comment on this item, please hit the raise hand icon on the bottom of your Zoom tool bar. Mr. Mayor, I see none.
Thank you. Sorry, I get excited. So, Mr. Attorney, to follow up with kind of some conclusory statements on what you told us, this language is non-negotiable, correct?
It is not.
Okay, and it's come straight from the template, doesn't materially alter our comp plan. It's just something that we need to have to comply with state law.
Right, and basically what it does is says that when you are taking action, that you will consider the property rights of the people here in the village, and it sets forth what types of things you should be considering, but that's all it does. It doesn't bind you to anything other than the fact that this commission will consider those rights when it's going to pass something that affects.
Understood. Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I think you've summarized it very well. Thank you. Ask if there's any other discussion items from the commission at this time.
I just have one quick question, which is that I see that the Design and Review Board also submitted some document pertaining to this ordinance. And so my only question was, has anything additional been added outside of the required language by the state?
No, nothing, nothing's been added and they approved it as is unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Is there any further discussion? No?
Two quick things.
Sure.
So this saved us from getting tangled up in our comp plan and getting that delayed. So who do we have to thank for catching this?
Miami Shores.
Thank you, Miami Shores.
Alex is there, is one of their planners, and they're going through the process. Knowing that our comp plan update is working through the process as well. When he submitted this, Miami Shores took the same idea that we were kind of holding back on. We'll do one transmittal to the state with everything to kind of save money. And the state came back and said, no, you got to do this first and you got to redo your comp plan readings. So when he learned that, he called me and said, Mario, we've got an issue. So that's why I did a budget, an agenda addendum so that we can add this so that in April, when the comp plan update comes for first reading to the commission, we will be in second reading. Then we can supply the property rights to the state. Then we have the mandatory waiting period that the state will do the review again of the draft that they've been working on with us. And then we can do the second reading. Just for clarification to the community, I've had Shantae sent out an email blast. March 15th, the planning board is having a special meeting for it. As part of the same statute that required this property rights element to it, there's other things that there's like minimum standards that we have to meet on our update of our comp plan that we're already multiple years late on. And so the only thing that we're doing on the comp plan update is meeting those state minimum requirements. And it's adding some language with regards to resiliency and things like that. We tried to have a joint meeting between the planning board and the resiliency board. The resiliency board might not be able to make it as whole, but they're hoping at least one of them will be present. But that's essentially all that this is, and the agenda is already out, the draft is out, the presentation's out. We're not changing density like Miami Shores did. We're not changing any material things within the comp plan. We're just doing minor tweaks so that we can finalize the state requirement of having a comp plan update.
But the item that's before us tonight is just.
It's just for the
for
property,
that. Okay.
correct.
So, well, then thank you, Alex and Miami Shores for saving us the drama. And then the other thing it's just a comment that, the language in here is that we consider property owners and their rights as we work on things. So guys, we have an obligation to do that. So as we work on code and land development code and things like that, we have to make sure that we actually do what our comp plan will now say that we'll do.
And for the record, in my professional opinion, I think you guys have always done that. And so I applaud the last commission and this commission for always taking into consideration everybody's not only rights, but their opinions as well.
Okay, we have no further discussion on this item. So it's a little loud. I'll ask Madam Clerk to please call roll.
Mayor Gross,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Amsler,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Olivera,
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance number 2023-05 passes first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, that concludes section 10. Section 11, seeing we have no resolutions to consider, we will move on to discussion 12, which is old business. Keeping in mind, well, jumping ahead, we had removed discussion of new business, so our last two items are under old business, 12A and 12B. Okay, so turn our attention to 12A. Mr. Manager, would you please introduce the item?
Sure. So at the last discussion, the commission wanted to bring back a draft outline of what the community meeting would essentially look like. Again, the idea of he would have various boards, pictures and things throughout that kind of help explain it, especially 10.3, which is the section where I think is the most concern with regards to the land development ordinance. Kind of, he's trying to get kind of a hybrid type of meeting between just a formal presentation like what we would have here and a charrette. Right. We still need to have a structure where we're presenting and we're explaining what it means. He wants to have more visuals to be able to explain and to showcase on actual homes and examples of homes like that. But then you will see where he's talking about polling and things like that. So it's trying to be able, and of course he puts roundtable discussion, is trying to find that kind of hybrid where we're getting feedback from the community. And they're getting an understanding of what these things actually mean and what they actually look at, and not just leaving it as language themselves. So that was his proposal on the agenda. I asked him to provide the various dates because we wanted to have this on a Saturday that he is available. I know that we initially started having the discussion and this Saturday didn't work and that Saturday didn't work. These are the ones that he's available to meet as of tonight. So March 11th, 18th, then April 8th, 15th, and 22nd. If none of those dates work, we'll have to look into May, which would further prolong the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So let's move to commission discussion of the item. I think looking at the dates right away, I think March 11th is certainly out. Can you please remind us what Mr. David charging for this type of event, so to speak? Do we remember? I thought it was somewhere around 4,000.
It could be up to about between like $2,000 to $4,000 dollars, depending on how long the meeting would last, the preparation for the meeting, and any other things that we would need to get, like the poster boards or anything like that. So he's trying to keep costs as low as possible, but he does realize there is an additional.
Do you have a specific time commitment for those dates? Hour, 2 hours, was your recollection, did he communicate any of that to you?
No, based on the last one that we had, I would probably venture that it would be about 2 to 3 hours on a Saturday.
It's on
It's on the memo. If you look on the memo of the item,
Cover page?
Oh, okay, I was looking.
or, yeah, the cover page. So under background,
So it's unfortunate, Alex is not able to be here. It's on the memo, on the agenda.
the item cover page, Commissioner Kennedy, under background where it says the recommendation, background, fiscal impact. So click on the item title.
Property right.
Item cover page.
Vice Mayor?
No, I was saying it's unfortunate Alex couldn't join us today just to ask a couple questions on this. You might be able to help me out to further understand. Some of this I don't know, dots on boards. I know Kahoot, Sildo, Bully Everywhere. I understand these are different interactive ways to engage with the community, where they'll be able to, through a certain amount of questions, just provide an answer as to ABC or a comment that could be added. I'm trying to understand in which part do we see the roundtable discussion that he lines up at the bottom?
So again, the idea is just to present the information of this is what this means, this is what this looks like. And from there, it's allowing that discussion just to happen.
Okay, so it will be a back and forth, essentially.
Right, there will be essentially, he would be able to present here, answer questions just like what we did last time.
Because the feeling last time, and this is the feedback that I got, is that it was already a presentation in place given with the instructions or was expected to see. And based on that, people had comments and that's where we stand. So I think the idea is to go back and forth and have the ability to rebuttal, like why A, B, and C, and then there is a feedback. Well, based on what you just said, it's a further conversation more than just take your comments and see how they apply.
No, so that's not what happened. In December, we gave a presentation, you have to give a presentation.
Right.
So that everybody's starting off from the same
Yeah.
starting point, understanding the same meeting. From there, residents would come up, they would make their comment, sit down. Sometimes they had a question and staff would clarify. There was back and forth with both Giano and Alex. Sometimes comments were residents differing from what another resident would say. And so there was back and forth. And so everything was taken into account and there was a conversation that was had. It wasn't just resident made a comment, resident made a comment, resident made a comment. Thank you guys for coming and going home.
Yeah.
It was like, I want to say it was about 3 hours of conversation. Of course, there was also conversation because we talked about landscaping code and things like that, but there was back and forth. When a question was posed, they answered to the best of their ability. And then sometimes it's like, okay, we made a note of your concern or your question or whatnot, but not every comment needed a response. So there was that back and forth.
And so the idea is to replicate that format and just engage with farther, more interactive ways.
Right, and that's why he's trying to, and it's not saying that they would use all of these things, but it's trying to say, we'll try to incorporate different techniques as well.
Yeah.
So that it's not just a comment or a back and forth. It's like, okay, well, how does everyone kind of feel on this aspect? Is the setback of the second floor, is everybody okay with it? no, I don't think we need it to begin with. And then so we can start kind of seeing, because sometimes people don't want to verbalize
Right.
because they don't want to be
Put on the spot.
put on the spot or feel that, you know, oh, this person has more experience, so my comment is not as valid as theirs, but I don't like it, right? And so it's trying to find that way to bring more engagement into it. But at no point during the first time was it just a residents' comment and we didn't incorporate or we didn't respond when it was needed to.
Got it. Okay. So, so this will be one of the dates that we will pick in essence.
Right. I mean, he gave the availability that he's available through March and April for one community meeting on a Saturday.
The reason I'm asking is because if it's electronically, I don't know how would work to also facilitate that prior to the meeting where you have kind of an explanation. I mean, the conversations have already been going on for a while. And the presentation, first presentation has already been put in place. The ordinance already on first reading level. So, you know, people that have already come and engaged since a while back, as well as people that haven't yet, have a history on the subject. So I'm thinking in a way to pull more feedback, and because not everybody might be able to make the day that we choose, providing for this electronic format of feedback in anticipation to it and allowing certain time just to collect the data, I think would be beneficial. As to provide a space, you know, for those that are not going to come. So maybe going back to Alex and asking on that would be something we could do. And then the next question I had was related to the outcome of this. So what do we see after he collects this information? How much time did he give in terms of coming back with a kind of a second view on the presentation?
I think once we have a workshop, then there's another discussion item on the commission, and the commission has to determine what it is that they want to move forward with or not move forward with after receiving all the feedback.
Is this a month after? Does it need 4 weeks, 3 weeks? What's the time?
I don't know.
Because we have a lot going on. I understand now with strategic plan coming our way, and there's going to be, you know, again, more meetings and more asking for people to participate. I don't want to overcrowd everyone's agenda with the idea that now you need to be part of all, and these are all very important subjects.
And I will add that if it's substantially different than what was presented, it might have to go back to the planning board for a vote.
Correct.
So it might, even if he can get all the changes done within a week or two, you might not see it for a month for 1 or 2 commission meetings. So it'll just be brought back with whatever the process is as quickly as we can do it. If we can do it for the next commission meeting after the meeting, the community meeting, great. If not, then it'll be the one after.
Got it. Okay. So that was in terms of the process. And then then the biggest thing I think I wanted just to bring out is if we feel comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, this is more money we're going to have to spend. I would have wanted Alex to have already set up, since he has a format, a set price, not between 2 and 4, but kind of what the price is going to be. But whatever it's going to be, it's money we're pulling out. So that we're adding to what already has been spent, which is, I understand, around 25 to 27, Mario, already on the project. And again, I remember having this discussion in December because it was a very important ad at the time, being a month into, you know, being elected. Something that's been carried for so long. I think it's important to just pull the time to digest, to meet with residents, to discuss it, to bring all the questions to staff, to meet with the planning board, to do whatever that we really felt it was needed. So I think the discussion I want to have is that, you know, I've had plenty of, we're now in March, we're talking about maybe doing this the next month to maybe having a proposal for the following month. We're talking 2-3 months down the road. So I want to be considerate with that. And I would like to put that in the table. Is this enough time where we feel we are in a need of a workshop as a next step? Do we feel we've gotten enough ourselves to make a decision? Is, you know, because what I would hate to happen is that we reach the point of the workshop and then we get another conversation like the first one that happened. And I did watch the video, so I understand the interactions, but I got to put the question out there because that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want the same format to be repeated. And I'm hoping we get something different, but we might not. I love the idea of the interactive process. I would like to see more time in advance to pull more feedback, just like what we're going to do in the strategic plan. But then the question comes to, you know, do we really need, that's the next step? And maybe we have that conversation.
Well, looking at the earliest timeline that we could possibly do this would be, not gonna be Saturday. The earliest possible day we could look at this would be March 18th. Which is that enough time to get notice out? Generate interest and get everyone notice to be there for it. It's
I don't.
It's simply not
see
enough.
a week.
week and a half.
Only a week.
Can I make a couple of comments before we start looking at the calendar, Jonathan, if you don't mind? So look, I understand the intent and the sentiment and the desire to get input, but you're describing what we already did. I'm really looking at you guys creating something that we already did, getting information that we already got. You can always say we can get more input from the community. We could do 6 of these in the next 3 years, and you could still say we can get more input from the community and different input. And now there's new residents and people learn more and they engage differently and engage more. You could chase your tail on that forever. At a certain point, you know, we got to do the job we were hired to do. And all of us have the ability to engage with people outside of these meetings separately. And people had ample opportunity to engage. So you guys all know where I stand on this. We did the work. We did, and we got all kinds of input from all kinds of people, professionals and residents alike. But here's what's still happening in Biscayne Park. Last night I went to the planning board meeting. A developer came in to show his first presentation on tearing down one of our original Biscayne Park homes and building a Goliath. What was described to me by a board member as a hotel. They're putting a hotel in Biscayne Park. So I want to just make sure you guys are clear on this. Developers are doing this to Biscayne Park. We're not talking about residents adding on to their homes. That's not what this is seeking to try to fix somehow. We are facing developers coming into our little tiny village of 1,100 buildings and one by one systematically tearing them down to build these gigantic things that are typically not lived in by residents. A lot of these have become Airbnbs already. So these Airbnbs that we got complaints about, that's where some of these came. And the people who said, I'm building it for myself, they're gone. The huge one over here, he lived there for a minute. He sold it to someone who turned it into an Airbnb. So let's just face the reality of what's really happening here. And it's happening not just in Biscayne Park, but everywhere. Developers are doing this. They're coming in and taking advantage of communities and all they care about is their profit. That's all they care about at the end of the day. They do not care about the character of our community. They do not care about the livability. They don't care about the residents around these buildings whose quality of life is upended. I had, you guys know I have office hours every Saturday at the rec center. Another resident came this past Saturday and another person contacted me today to set up his meeting for this coming Saturday. One of your neighbors, because it's happening on your block now. So it's happening, it drops into a street and then another one and another one, and another one. And while we sit here and talk about it, for 2 years, the former commission worked on it. Well, the 2 years has blended over into this commission. What I'm trying to impress upon you guys is we need to get this done. I'm not suggesting that we rush it. God knows we haven't been rushing it. We employed people, we spent a whole lot of money and spent a whole lot of time and lots of meeting times and lots of resident time in meetings and outside of meetings talking about this. It's time to get it done. So tonight we need to figure out when we're going to get this done, how we're going to get it done, but we can't keep dragging this out. So these meetings that you're describing here, you guys all want it, so it's going to happen. Just tell me what day to be there, but make it as quickly as possible. But we can't rush it either and not have the ability for residents to to plan to be there as well. And then we each have a job to do to get people to show up. If you want more input, then it's not just a matter of saying, Mario, send out an email blast. We've got to do the work. Sometimes that means we get on the phone, we call the people we know, we get on our mom's group chats. We make people show up and engage. And if they don't, then that tells you something too. But if you're going to do this and you really intend to make it available to all kinds of people, then it can't just be a Saturday. It's got to be at different times as well, because some people can't do Saturdays. Some people can't do a weekday. Some people can't do a weekday night. So guys, we've done this. So figure it out, please, and figure it out now and plan this thing out so we can move forward, because we're losing one property after another, and we have people who are really upset about what's happening to the quality of their life in their own home that they bought and live in, because a developer is buying the property next to them and turning it into one of these things and impacting their quality of life. People who have lived here for decades, people who are raising their kids here are now saying, and now I'm not private in my backyard. So it's a very real thing. It's not just this community that's dealing with it. Lots of communities are dealing with it. But we have the integrity of a community to protect here, and we have our individual residents and their enjoyment of their own properties, or whatever that legal term is. So figure it out. Tell me where to be, tell me when to be there. I will be there ready to get to work, but figure it out. And figure out how much money we're going to spend in the process, because I don't like this loosey-goosey. It's going to be between this and this. We're spending money. We already spent a lot of money. You guys are now want to spend more money. Know exactly how much money you're going to spend, please.
I wanted to address what an alternative would look like. So if Commissioner Olivera, if you had something on the format that's being presented, I'd offer you to.
Thanks. I do love this format that's being presented. I have spoken with many residents in my mom group and other groups around here in the neighborhood. And while you mentioned that this has been done, it appears that the revisions or the input from those residents hasn't really affected the ordinance and what's been brought back to us. That's what I've noticed. And I think that's why we're remaining on this topic of let's go back to the drawing board again. When I read through this ordinance, I'm not seeing how it affects a developer whatsoever. I am seeing how it affects a family like mine that may need to build a second story and is losing square footage because of additional setbacks that just don't really make sense to me. I do feel that the planning board has language regarding harmonious blending in that seems like it could curtail developer, et cetera, et cetera. We cannot control the state law allowing Airbnbs, right? We all know that. So we cannot debate things that we cannot control at this stage, in my opinion. So going back to the format, I think it's great. I think if there's a way of getting an email out that has a survey, those are things that get tallied as the answers come in. So you're getting real-time data before a workshop, during a workshop, you can see it on the screen. It's pretty interactive and you're able to say, oh, actually, 75% of the people here said they don't care if you put a balcony, on the side. You can get that detail of information, in a group setting. So I do think it's valuable. If everyone,
The free stuff or the.
all of the above, all of the above is possible with technology. So as we're sitting here discussing this, I'm going to go with, okay, we move forward and we find a date, or we don't. That's what I have to say.
All right, so what I was going to inquire about before we decide if we're picking a date here is the alternative. What does the alternative look like? Is the alternative putting the amendment back onto our next or April or May regular commission meeting and going back to the discussion on 10.3?
We never went through the whole thing.
We didn't go through 10.3. That's
So, I
what I'm
mean,
saying.
if we went through certain sections,
We went through everything but 10.3, I think.
and I think we need to do the same thing with that one.
So then the next step, I'm just proposing our hypotheticals and what our options are if we don't go forward with a charrette type option that's being proposed in front of us, the next step then would be to put basically put 10.3 back on our agenda for discussion amongst us and for public comment at that.
Because it's already gone through the planning board.
Right.
Correct.
It hasn't been touched since we discussed this in.
And
But why are we
clarify.
gonna discuss it among ourselves? Because the whole point was to bring the chapter 10 to the discussion with the community, because that was where the heavy conversations were happening. So why are we wanna go again and sit down and do a workshop among ourselves?
I'm happy to answer that question, but I want to see, Mr. Manager, did you have a comment on that for clarification?
Yeah, just to clarify, so all the feedback that was received during that workshop and since then was put together, and essentially when it's come up to planning, the planning board then says, no, we don't want this, yes, we want this or whatnot, and that's how you got what is in front of you now. So it's not to say that things were not considered, it's that they didn't make it through the planning board. And so what you have in front of you is that now. It's not to say that the commission can say, okay, planning board, we heard you, but we're gonna throw this back into it, or we're gonna alter what you wanted and we're gonna put that. You have that capability to do so. But just to make sure that you understood, it's, yes, as all these conversations and all that was heard, when it gets to the planning board, they do a vote just like you all. They have their discussions, they have their debates, and then they say, okay, this is what we're approving. We want this, we don't want this. And then that vote happens, and that's where we are now, is what you're reading of what the planning board approved.
Everything doesn't make the cut. I mean, we listen, it's like back to the last item we just voted on. We consider everything, and then and Alex, when he worked on it, incorporated things or didn't, and the planning board had all of it. The planning board was in attendance at the meeting. And so everything, look, we're never gonna make everybody happy. Here's the other thing I can probably guesstimate is probably a fair guess. No matter how well we try to promote this thing and get more people here, the majority of the village won't even know that it took place.
Mhm.
They won't ever know it even happened. Whether they were interested in engaging or not, the majority of people won't even know.
So I guess my straightforward question is, are we ready to vote on this ordinance as it stands today?
No, because we didn't ever finish talking through it.
That's what that's what I'm saying. So if
So-
we're not comfortable as it stands today, what is the next step? The
So
next. step
That was
we-
what sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but what I was going to say was, is the alternative putting it back on, maybe call a special agenda meeting for just 10.3.
Which is what we did
And-
before, and we didn't do it.
Well, we didn't get to it. We discussed everything else and we spent a lot of time on that, which is fine. But I'm saying the alternative to the charrette community format maybe would be a special agenda item to say where we're only putting 10.3 on that. We're inviting people to come to that special agenda meeting and say, this is when we're discussing it, we're going to talk about it. And I think maybe from there, we implement changes or.
But the discussion, then if we put it in an agenda in a regular commission meeting, if I
Or
understand
a
you
special meeting.
correctly,
I don't know that it would fit on a regular one. I
but-
think.
or a special, the format in which we proceed with our commission meetings is this formal, we're 3 minutes of comments. This is not an open discussion.
We can,
And again, we did 10-3, and that's why we didn't get anywhere.
Right.
Because there is back and forth. So for me is, if we're gonna move back, we're gonna go back to where we were last time we were discussing it. We had a special commission meeting and we spoke about a sentence for an hour, which happened. Might be the very same case and we want to move forward. So I just want to know that if we move forward with the format of discussion, we go and approve up to $4,000, which is the max they can go for. And we pick a date, knowing for enough time for participation, and we leave it open through technology plus participation to make it happen. And that's what we do. And that's going to be for chapter 10 only, because we had already discussed chapter 2 and chapter 4. Or is it open to everything for discussion? Again. Okay,
Because then we would ultimately be voting on the ordinance that includes all of it.
Correct.
You have to.
so that's
So
why.
want people to engage again, they need to engage in all of it.
And that's why the reason I bring it up is because currently we have an ordinance that have 3 chapters in it. So another way to look at it, and again, I'm throwing it out there, Mr. Manager, what is the cost for us to split say we were to split the ordinance in two. And we had chapter 2 and 4 in one, and then we have a separate discussion for chapter 10, because then we can move forward on the things we sort of align. And then we can continue the workshop to finalize and approve if that's what we wish to do. And then we leave the workshop just on an ordinance separate for chapter 10. I understand the original idea of putting it all together, but to me is chewing more, is biting more than we can chew.
I wonder how much crosstalk is in there that it would all need to be.
I don't think much. That's the reason why we wanted to take 10 out of that for a conversation. So if my question is in terms of cost, and I don't know the logistics of this, if we were to separate them and say pass an ordinance and then it's to be published, needs to be booked, coded or whatever. Mario, what's the cost of that?
So the overall notice, it's just whatever the cost is for advertising the ordinances. And then once you codify it and it passes second reading, it goes to Muni Code and there's a cost associated with that. So if we split the ordinance, there's aspects of it that we could split, right? Which are very minor. And I think you guys may have spent 15 minutes on.
Yeah.
But you cannot I guess you could, but I wouldn't advise splitting 10.3 in its own ordinance because you have sections of definitions and things like that that
Right.
are not in 10.3 that affect 10.3.
Yeah.
So if you want to just leave it in the McMatchin area, you're still going to have those chapter, I think it's chapter 17 and chapter
4.
2.
And 2.
Right. So those are all, and that's the majority of it. You've got a couple other areas that we kind of threw in there just to save some of that cost, but that's immaterial to this discussion. The other aspect, you guys already went through all of those things, the definitions and all that. The only thing that's left is the 10.3.3, which is predominantly the setback of second stories and something like that, and the facade of like that one wall and things like that. That's the only section that you guys have not talked about.
Height and sort of the some of the big topics.
Okay, so are
Let me
we
go back
agreeing?
about if you're saying, I'm sorry, if you're saying definitions are included in there, it worries me to kind of peel these things separate because the most substantive thing is 10.3. So,
Right.
so I mean, the rest can wait. It's 10.3 that has the meaty stuff in it. So the other stuff, it's not nearly as important. It's important. I understand what you're trying to do. Like, let's get something done.
Yeah, I'm just trying not to make it, it's been large enough for us to carry us for months of discussion.
It wouldn't
I just
affect
trying
the
to make
discussion, though.
it wouldn't affect it.
No, those things that we can peel away wouldn't affect the discussion of the buildings and the design and that kind of
You
stuff.
suggest something else. It's not, no, I'm sorry. It's not a suggestion. It's sort of a comment. I know I'm freezing too, like shivering over here. We're under like a fan. So it's okay. It's keeping me awake. Me too. Usually the one saying crank it, but
I'm like waiting.
we're over here. We're over here like shivering. But here's the other thing. So we've gone through all of it except this one section. I sort of feel like we didn't complete our part of the job first. Like we should complete that, which is what we set out to do. And then decide, I think we're deciding next steps before we've even gotten through. I think we should finish our conversation because it partially frames, if we decide to do a workshop, it frames what the content of that will be. We might shoot things down in there.
But I think it defeats the purpose to me, in my opinion, to call for the community to participate if we are gonna, between ourselves, do half of it before.
Well, we can always change our mind. Here, Veronica, when we did the first one back 2 Decembers ago, we made the decision that we would have something to show people because we couldn't have a workshop with nothing to show them. Like we needed to have something to frame out. It would just be this huge, gigantic, nebulous thing. And that would be the definition of a cluster. And we didn't want to do that. So we thought, okay, we will frame something out here to present, and that's what we'll discuss. And then we would go massage and take it to the next step.
Which is where we are right now.
Well, except we didn't finish that one section. I think we.
But Alex is saying in the workshop, he's bringing additional, I mean, the conversation at least that I have with him, you know, which I provided the kind of the concerns channeling from the community that I received was that's a great feedback, because then it allows me to pull together more drawings and examples to address those concerns. Again, because if I'm going to sit down and talk about 10, we can do that now. And that's what I'm saying. Do we want to do that now or not? And it's like the big elephant at the table
I would-
that,
You're asking that direct question. I would rather us finish 10-3, what we intended, what we set out to do.
correct. So so, or we move forward with the idea of we want to have the pool, you know, and have that discussion openly with the community. Again, I just want to throw it out there because I can already tell you, I have a stand on this ordinance.
What?
I have a stand, I have an opinion about
Oh,
it.
stand.
So I can actually talk about it, but it's based on the time that I've had to explore since December, where I requested an extension of it, a defer of the first reading. And it was needed for me to actually go deeper into it. But I also wanted to do diligence that everybody in this table has had the same. And has had the same opportunity, and to kind of convey either that is okay, no, or yes, but it's so both ways. Maybe you got 50-50 feedback and you're really thrown about what to do, which happens. I mean, that's why it's a serious matter that we're touching, and we need, you know, feedback from the community. Okay. So then we move forward with the charrette. I'll call it charrette. Open discussion.
I've spoken with many residents, professionals, what I feel are experts in the various fields, you know, different types of residents, and, you know, I have a stand, I have how I feel about it. I would move forward with a workshop to really get even confirmation of that. And because of the technology end of it, kind of being so transparent for everyone involved to see, you see, this is how they feel about it on a TV screen, you know, for everyone to have no question about it. I'm also willing to get into the discussion tonight if if that's permissible, if we're allowed to do that.
I can say that I've had people come up to me as recently as Sunday and talk to me about coming across this for the first time, or saying, what are you guys doing? What's happening with this? I'm reading it. It seems like the more and more it's there, getting more feedback from people who are seeing for the first time or have opinions on it. Here's a question, a logistical question. If we were to dive into 10.3 tonight and say, we finish our discussion, we talk about it, maybe there's things we throw out, maybe there's things we like, whatever. How long does that delay Alex in what he would be doing if we were to go to a discussion format from there? So think about it. If we talk about it tonight and we change things and we decide, okay, we still want some community feedback on this because people are still concerned about it. This is probably, depending on what we do, it could materially alter how Alex needs to set up these things. So could that delay the process further? I'm certainly concerned of delay. Delay makes me concerned on this. I don't want to delay this much further. I want to spend the time with it, and I want people to spend the time with it, but I don't want this to come back to us in August and say we're still talking about it. It's a long time. So do we have an idea of how long that might delay Alex?
Alex, in these cases, has always been very quick to try to move any of these changes, even from the planning board up to getting it ready for commission to consider. So if you all were to have a conversation tonight and say, you know, for example,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your thought, but it also occurs to me that Art is not here.
right.
I thought you were saying hypothetically tonight. Absolutely, I'm not prepared to
Right.
do that.
Yeah, that's it.
No.
I was more in a hypothetical
Yeah.
position, but
so-
it did just occur
Right.
to me. I say
But-
Commissioner Gonzalez isn't even here to provide us his
Correct.
feedback.
So
So this is kind of a non-starter.
if the commission were to say, okay, you know, we had our discussion and we're gonna say that a setback on the second story balcony is going to be 100 feet. Just to throw a ridiculous number so no one thinks that it's an actual number, right? Then he would just plug that in and make that change. It's not gonna be like all of a sudden he's gonna need 3 months to prepare for it.
That's fine.
So
but
the biggest thing is for what his outline and what he's trying to do is being able to say, okay, this is what it is, and then it's just getting the actual examples of what a property like that might look like, more than what was done 2 years, because he went by and he drove through some neighborhoods and stuff and gave a quick example from the initial discussion 2 years ago. Now there's a lot more detail in there, so he's getting those examples. We could leave a survey, but I guess the survey would be more like, you know, here's the proposal, this is what it looks like, do you like it, yes or no? And we could collect that and leave that kind of survey open in that kind of area. I would really just say, Alex, you know how to do these things, you formulate the survey. I don't know how long that would take for him to do, so that we have a survey just open for X amount of time.
Yeah, and I would want that survey to go through us first. I would not be comfortable with a survey going out to the community that we have not had a chance to look at as a group and discuss as a group. I want to make sure that if we're going to do something like that, it's going to cost us more money, that we're going to get, it's going to get the right kind of information for.
I'm a fan, and I've always done this in all of our discussions. Give the community a starting point to start talking. Okay, it's why we did the community workshop 2 years ago the way that we did, because that allows them to be able to say, I do not like that. That is horrible. Or you know what? That doesn't look too bad, right? But if we just leave it as, hey, we're thinking of probably changing the setbacks of second stories, what do you guys think? I don't know. What does that really mean?
Yes, that's the problem. You start asking
So-
questions like that. I'm afraid people, that's why I want to see the survey, because we can't ask questions that people don't, they'll answer a question based on a limited understanding of it, or it'll be off-putting and make them not want to engage at all.
So if the commission wants to have the discussion and say, okay, after all of our discussion, I think this is where we end up. Let's take this idea to the community and see how much of it they like and they don't like, and then we can come back and change it. Yes, it prolongs the discussion, but at least you're giving the community an opportunity to see from where you all are starting, and where you're saying, okay, I think this is where we want to have that discussion. Do you have any concerns on this type of setback? I don't know, maybe we go, the way I look at it, I'd hate to go to the community and do this meeting and get all this feedback and be like, yeah, I was never going to go for something like that to begin with. Well, then why'd you ask me? You know, like, why'd you waste my time? Like, bring me something that you guys are actually considering. And if 10.3, the way it's written, is something that you are actually considering, then let's take that to the community and get their feedback on that, right? And let them tell us, yes on this, no on this, change this over here. This is what it is, like, oh, wow, okay, we're building that consensus, so we're all building towards something. But, you know, if we're going to go and say like, well, I just want to hear what people have to say, but I don't even know that I really like a 10-foot setback. I might be okay with 2. Well, if you would have told me 2 instead of 10, then I would have been okay with that. I didn't have to spend an hour arguing with another resident or debunking what Alex is saying, or, you know, I think we're providing structure. I like structure. I think we're doing that. And I don't think we're ignoring the community just because we have a presentation and a set picture or set definition of this is what this would look like. I think we're giving that community the opportunity to say yay to this or no to that, and this is how we would change it. Okay, then we'll take that back to planning. And now planning, this is what we heard, this is how it changes. They'll go through their exercise again, and then it comes back to the commission, and then you'll see it as it came out of it, or some form of it, or some not. And then you have that another discussion to say, hey, planning, I hear you, but that's not the feedback we got. And I think we were all kind of on the same board when we left that meeting, because we started somewhere and we ended somewhere. If we just say, hey, we're going to have, in my opinion, we're just going to have a community meeting and everything's going to be thrown out and just bring me an idea, you're going to have 100 different opinions. And I don't think you're going to
All of it.
correlate what it's going to look like.
Monica,
But
you
the
said
idea
something?
was not, I'm sorry, it was not just to throw out an idea from zero, but what I understand on the workshop, where we stand right now is
Mhm.
with the learnings that we've done so far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we are, okay, give me an idea. So what do you think, would you like to see? This is very much, this is what's happened. This is what's has been affected already.
Right.
This is the feedback provided to the planner. The planner has made such, certain suggestions based on the feedback. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so based on that, then we can elaborate a workshop among ourselves to incorporate whatever comes after. And that's our conversation with Alex after.
Yeah. So
what I see, yeah.
again, what I'm saying is if you all want to have a discussion to further drill down 10.3 and then present that, I don't think that's a bad thing. If you want to take what is currently right now and take it to the community, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think let's just have a workshop and see what kind of comes out of it without at least a starting point. That is where I think we just start spinning wheels.
Correct.
And
Yep.
so as long as we're kind of like, okay, we're going to use this as the baseline. There's some things I like, some things I don't, but let's figure out what those things are as a community. That's fine. But I mean, if you all know, like, look, there's no way I'm ever going to let XYZ happen. Well, okay, then why are we taking it to the community if we know that as a group, we're not going to allow a 100-foot setback? That's just, or exactly, or a 50-foot. So I mean, there's pros and cons to how you want to do it. It's up to
Correct.
you all. I mean, you're the commission. You guys were elected to represent the community and how you want to make these decisions. And you're right. You have to make the decision. There's no wrong way to do this, right? It's where are you going to get enough information that you're going to be comfortable with? I think
Yeah, where we stand.
my decision is representative of the feedback that I've received in more than just one way, right? And so as long as
I
you can
think
get
that's where
there, then we can
stand
do it.
right now. It's what, okay, so do we feel comfortable we have that or not? So is it needed?
We have what or not.
The feedback that we needed to make a decision on where are the things we want to see changed, how do we want to see this reflected, basically? Because that conversation started, but again, it started from our standpoint, obviously very different in December. That's why it was stopped. And it has progressively gotten feedback from people to define, okay, where do we want to see these changes? So do we, what comes first? The egg or the chicken here, right? Do we meet ourselves and define that, or we move forward with where we are? I feel for what I've already experienced, and again, being new to this, and I know in the times it's taken us to meet after month, making the strategic plan also part of the program. I keep seeing, it's very hard to us to combine with the consultant, additional to add another item to the community. So I want to be fair to that, to what's coming.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again, because that's what I was going to say a moment ago. You brought that up earlier, that you're concerned that this could impact engagement on the. Yeah, we have to not, I mean, look, we can overburden ourselves because we signed up for the gig, and if we have to meet more often than we thought we would, well, eat it. So, but you signed up, here we go. Show up on Tuesday, we'll do it again.
Mhm.
Our job. But residents, we really need to foster that engagement. And if we do things that they just say enough already, or these things sort of sound like, what, they all sound like the same thing, because they're not engaged like we are. And, I don't.
People may very easily intertwine both and not clearly understand
Exactly.
the two different things are that's what, on top of whatever may come, which we don't know.
Yeah, and then
So-
budget season starting right on the heels of that. So we have to look at this whole, what's coming up here. We have LDC, McMansions. We have the strategic planning. We have budget, which will start soon. And that, you guys think you're strapped for time now. Wait till the budget season gets into full swing. Off we go. And a lot of homework goes into those meetings as well. You don't just show up and figure out your way through a budget. It's a lot. And things that we have other unfinished business. So, that's why I said last week at our meeting, I would really appreciate a special meeting that just sort of organizes all of this. We have not just these things, we have a lot of other unfinished business sort of hanging out there that we didn't get to. We need to sit down and prioritize all of this and figure out what we invite residents are invited into every meeting we have. That's the fact, part of the deal. But we need to figure out and calendarize all of this, or we're going to be doing this again. and again and again.
So that's the challenge, that I see. I'm good, again, I feel I am a much better stand than where I was clearly in December, to already know that I have the feedback from the community. I've engaged with the community in a way that I feel comfortable coming with a decision on where I need to kind of provide the input, on which areas I don't feel comfortable. So I'm ready to have this discussion internally, but I want to make sure that everybody feels the same way. Because again, the community approach in the charrette was to have that feedback be provided to us. And to your point, you got people on Sunday, they were just approaching you, because they don't know what's going on. It's very hard to catch them up after 20 months. And that's what we've done in the last 3.
And that's also, and that will never end. So I kind of said that earlier.
There's
Never
always
end. People, you'll be approached
yeah.
the Sunday after we get it all done, signed, sealed and delivered, second reading, it's law. You'll meet someone in the park and they'll say, you working on a McMansion thing? I want to learn more about that. So that'll always happen. And the other thing I wanted to say, just right out of my mind, but, remember that let's say we called a special meeting to discuss 10.3, right? We can structure that meeting differently if we want to. You could say, look, we're going to look at each, I don't have 10.3 in front of me, but there's 7 sections in it. And for each section, we're going to allow public comment 1 minute related only to things in 10.3.1, and let people talk about, you could allow people to talk more than once if we wanted to at the meeting. So we can allow for that. We're not limited to a meeting with 3 minutes of public comment at the beginning and that's that. We could structure it differently if we wanted to. Actually, I think Jonathan has the ability to completely do that unilaterally.
That's what I was trying to get at earlier when we were talking about alternatives. Alternatives being if we were to schedule it on its own agenda, to basically notice that as the opportunity to come in and talk about 10.3. And then I know, we limit to 2-3 minutes. You could say, we'll open it up 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or several minutes per section.
Right. Allow people to come up
do it.
section by section.
Right. You can do it however is necessary to do what Commissioner Amsler is saying, is get the feedback that we feel is necessary to comment on the item. That's what you're saying is where I was trying to go by saying, what does the alternative look like?
Look, that sounds like a compromise to me. That sounds like we try, and look, and here's the other thing. If we do that and we feel like, okay, that didn't work, we didn't really get what we wanted, we're not obligated to vote on it in second reading the next month. We can say, okay, that didn't work. What are we going to do
And
next?
it's not second reading, it's just discussion item.
No, I'm saying is we're not obligated to then take the
Right,
next
no.
step at the next meeting.
I'm
We
agreeing.
can say, well, that worked and now we're ready to take next steps and bring it back to us and run it through the planning board and off we go. Or, well, it didn't work. We didn't really gain anything there and we do need to do something else. We could try it. But at least it helps get it moving forward. It gets us through 10.3.
And I think that
And there
at
you
least
go.
right
Else
now,
we get
with one. Well, the benefit of doing it in this way versus other ways, I'm just looking at our options again. The benefit of doing it this way is to say we preserve the option to go to a charrette. We preserve the option to call to Alex and say, we need more work. It allows us to discuss the item and it sounds like there's really no impact on Alex. If we were to look at 10.3 and say, we could get into that meeting and say, we don't like half of this, kill half of it. And then we could go to, and then if we say we still have community questions as to the remainder of 10.3, then we could go to Alex, and Alex, it sounds like, could turn it around still pretty quickly and put together a comp of what it would look like under the amended 10.3. We could put it on special, and we could put it on special agenda, sorry. We put it on a special agenda where it's just that item, and that is all we focus on.
And we decide that we'll allow a different kind of engagement.
Different kind of format for it.
We'll do have, and it would make look, the way things are organized in little paragraphs and sections, it's really easy to say, guys, public comment now is only on this, from this line to that line, that's it,
In the conclusion of that is, we feel that it's worked, that, like you said, that we've have community feedback on it, on these items, and we killed all of it. or we kept all of it.
I promise you what will happen. It's
Anything
the
in
second
between.
time someone gets up to talk, if they want to rebut something that someone said at the previous one, they're going to say, before I make a comment about fences, I want to say something about what someone said about setbacks. They're going to do it. So you'll get re-engagement.
And the option to call on Alex to put together the designs, the boards, the surveys, if we still don't feel that it's been properly addressed at that time, the option to call on Alex is still available to us, and there's no delay in time period in him putting together the items for us. It sounds like a step in the right direction. You gonna say something?
Just that for that special meeting, would you like Alex to be in attendance? And if,
I think we have to.
and apart from that, would our attorneys be able to, if they participate, it would be remotely maybe? So that they don't have to be here because
Well, a lot of.
although it's a special meeting, it's more of a discussion item meeting, not
Right.
not necessarily a voting item. So it's more of
And if I
a workshop per se, as opposed to, or town as opposed to a commission meeting where you're voting.
If I remember correctly, a lot of the legal additions are not part of 10.3.
No.
They're part of the other items that we've been
Right.
through. So if they can be there virtually, then I think that would be fine. What are we looking at for costs for Alex for that type of thing?
I don't think that the main part of the costs for the community meeting is all the preparation work in advance of the meeting, then the hours being put into that, the hours of the meeting, and any post. I don't know that he would really charge to be as a part of a discussion item.
Okay.
So I can get some dates from him for weekday, if that's what we want to do. For a weeknight and stuff so that we can have that special meeting, and then I can just call everybody and make sure that that you're all available. And then we can just put that as an agenda and put it on.
Quick question. I don't mean to divert from the thing that we are talking about, but the additional money that came from the building fund. The 366,000 that we were talking about earlier. Is that something that would be able to pay for Alex's time and prep for a charrette?
I don't know.
It's land code, so I'm trying to see if, does it fit within?
Yeah, usually the planning department does fall under that building
Under-
aspect, but we'll figure that out, and that's something that we can kind of work out. I don't think we got to spend too much time on that or figuring out how that's gonna cost.
I'm just looking,
Yeah, I'll dot those dot those i's and cross those t's. I don't think you need to worry about that. Just, is this a format that the four of you are comfortable with moving forward in? And then I can, do you want it on the Saturday? Do you want it during a weeknight? If you can give me that time, then I can try to coordinate. If it's a Saturday, then we know what days he's available. If it's during the week, I'll have to go back and then I'll have to get an idea of when you all are available with the dates that he's available, and then we can schedule that. So I just need to know that.
Dates he gave us and say, I mean, can we agree now on whether we think a weeknight or a Saturday is better?
Up to you all.
is this, you're talking about a special meeting?
Or this meeting?
Whether we
where
call
we're
it a
gonna
community
probably get
meeting or a
10-3.
special meeting, or, I mean.
Oh, the 10-3 meetings.
He's only given us Saturdays.
Well, because that was the question, I would go, if you want to have it during the weekday, right? I would go and get his availability and then call each of you for your availability and see if you all are available on one of the days that he's available.
What
If
do you
it's-
guys prefer,
yeah.
weeknight or weekend?
Up to you all.
What do you think is better for?
For me,
resident
weekdays,
engagement?
like the Tuesday that we currently have our commission meetings or special commission meetings, works.
Well, what do we think? And look, the goal here, you guys want to get resident engagement. So what do you think is best for
I
resident?
was gonna ask, are we better off on a weekday night or a Saturday for?
I don't know the answer to
residents?
that.
But I just want to clarify it on my end, because that for me, it's a little, it's kind of going back to the format that we had before. So either we provide the engagement through the charrette and on an open discussion, or we just have the workshop. So, because we're saying what we're gonna listen to what happens at night as a motivator for us to change whatever's in front of us. So what's happened in the 20 months? So we've received comments from everybody, plus the work that we've been doing. So I understand that we want to open another door for community to come forward. I just don't think that, again, it's trying to find a middle way so we feel comfortable, but either we have the workshop among ourselves or we open it to discussion of the public. I don't believe that, it could happen. And again, I'm just thinking, we assess a 2 hour for our discussion meeting and we have, everybody's gonna, okay, come talk. And we might have, 2 more hours of comments. Hopefully, that would be great. But again, is the idea of the format, then let's just spend whatever we need to go to the workshop and provide that space for an open discussion. And I just want to stay clear because that was the point I want to make. It's not about the $4,000 extra that we need to spend. At this stage, we've spent 27. So spending $4,000 more is not the concern here. The concern is that we've spent $4,000 4 more months and get exactly the same. That's my fear.
So what do you want to do?
I'd rather go to the workshop because again, I have a
What's the workshop
stand.
mean to you?
We meet all next time, 5 commissioners, and discuss what we do with 10.
With no resident input?
I mean, we can open it for resident, but my point of let's allow everybody to come a minute, it's what we've had so far. And so we're, in every commission that we've had, a special commission or a regular commission, we talked about this item, we've already had that. So is that going to make the difference? I think it's just going to prolongate whatever happens that night. And the focus and the objective is for us to have us 5 discuss it, or again, it's a discussion. That's why we're having it. I keep going back and forth. Why? One is that lots of residents have asked for an opportunity to have an open discussion, which they feel they haven't had.
Okay, the people who feel like they didn't have an open discussion, did they attend any of these things? Did they attend?
Yeah,
Commission meetings?
some actually have seen the video as well. So not necessarily, some have just engaged. And they're like, so what happened? I want to be part of the conversation. So conversation to me is another 3 minutes. Again, because knowing what happened, we have evidence from people participating, not being comfortable with the format. So if we're going to provide the person that approached you on Sunday with the format, I would choose not to be the same one.
Yeah, well, people who aren't comfortable will, they're often not comfortable when it starts taking place and they don't want to be part of sort of the fray. And as it can feel like, just aren't comfortable speaking up like.
And that's what I'm going for. So I keep going back and forth because again, we're never going to get 3,000 people to come and say what they want. And I'm going to start with, I think I've had enough time to connect with residents and my constituents to feel in a position that I'm comfortable talking about it. So I'm ready to move through that workshop among ourselves to make that happen.
Kind of sounds like you're agreeing to have what we're discussing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's open to comments. Again, I just conscious of the time, so we don't have 2 special commissions because it's 3 hours now each. Because again,
every
that's
other
what
time.
happened that we had, this extensions, because we don't finish.
Every other time we've had a discussion on the other sections of it, we allowed for public comment because it was
True,
it's where we allowed it. So
true.
it's trying to keep things like sort of apples to apples.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think we have to, I think we have.
I understand. I understand. Yeah. I'm just, again, we can,
I don't, yeah.
and I agree. It's just, we had the situation on the special commission. It was an hour and we didn't move forward. So being conscious of it,
It's an hour versus. The only, yes, I understand your concern. It was a long time on that one item. And that's fine. But
it might happen. I mean, it might happen that we spend 2 hours just talking about a paragraph. Hopefully not.
And I hope that doesn't happen either, but when you're working through a code, it's important that you get it all right because we're looking at, like last night, planning board is sending a memo back to us about one thing in particular that was in the construction code that I was one of the people that helped maneuver through. And there's something really ambiguous in there. It's like, oh, I read it. I'm like, that is a problem. It came up live in a meeting. So you do have to spend time parsing words and making sure it's all right tonight. We had a conversation about, the word and. No, it says this and this. So it's like, you have to really harsh words, because then it's going to be interpreted only, not based on our intent, but only based on the language that's in the code. Yeah. What are we doing?
Okay. It sounds like, this is what I propose, that we set a special agenda meeting to discuss only this item. We keep it open for public comment. And if we feel that we have not received the requisite amount of feedback, or that it's unresolved, or that there's more that needs to be discussed, we leave the option open to discuss, to go back to Alex to put together the items needed for the charrette.
Next steps. So when do you want to do? Do you guys think it's better, just generally speaking, on a weeknight or on a Saturday?
Weeknight for me.
You think it's not for you, for residents? Do you think it's?
No,
better-
because the format of the commission is on a Tuesday anyhow, and that's how we
you think
get.
it's better for residents? So do we think it, in terms of getting residents to engage? I don't really have an opinion, because I've been here in this room for Saturday things, and I'm here looking at 3 residents up here on the Tuesday. So what do we think is better? I'm good either way. Tuesday?
For me, Tuesday.
Let's pick a Tuesday and do it.
For me, it's a Tuesday and it'll be a special meeting. In other words, we would be able to vote, right? But the attorney will attend
I don't
No.
know.
Zoom.
No,
Putting on.
no. We're, I mean, so,
I don't know what we would be voting on though.
so would you be bringing
to vote.
a first reading? Is that what you're asking? Or is it just a discussion item?
It's a
Because if it's just a discussion item, you're not voting on anything,
It's discussion. Got it.
right?
Okay, just wanted the clarification.
You, correct. You can come to consensus on something and then we would bring something back for,
My mind, I'm thinking about persuading residents to come and how much forward movement we could be having on a day like that. But obviously, discussion is great. Consensus is also, I think, a very big step forward, especially with input from residents that maybe we don't typically see here.
Yeah.
And the focus only on that topic. You don't have to sit through other things, so
and to
thinking in those terms.
be clear,
I always hear from people with kids that they can't come to our meetings because they have kids and it's school and it's dinners and it's homework, and
so
that's what I hear.
the
back.
request, is the request still to have Alex participate?
Yes.
Okay, so a Tuesday night that he's available so that Alex can participate and our attorneys can zoom in and follow along if need be, but there's no voting item, so there's really no need for them to be there in person.
So to make this easier for you, Mario, why don't we all look at our calendars now and say through the end of April, let's tell Mario any nights that don't work for us, so he doesn't come back and say, well, the night Alex wants to do it is April 11th. And we say, oh, no, we can't do that. So, we have a meeting on April 4th. So
I can do any day.
we can't do it in a week. Well, I don't know, but it's not enough time to get people for us. to
We
get-
want more, we don't have enough time to tell.
No, Val's not around that week.
Okay, good thing we asked. So the 21st.
And I really, since she's the one that's been working on this, I think it's better for her.
Yeah.
To be able to participate.
I can do any Tuesday. I'll do any day.
There's a sustainability meeting that night, if that matters. Tuesday, March 28th is a sustainability and resilience meeting in this room.
What
get-
time is it?
They do theirs at 6, I want to say 7. They do theirs at 7. Yeah. Do you guys want to do a different night of the week? Not just for that reason, but is there another night that you think might work?
May I just recommend, let me get the dates from Alex and then I'll just talk to you all individually with what's available. Because he also has other municipalities that they meet on Tuesdays and he's got to be there and they're not always the first Tuesday either, so.
When does the strategic planning stuff start?
I met with Alan yesterday and we're trying to speed some stuff up so that hopefully we can get something out there and started in April. So we're trying to move as quickly as we can.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
quick comment.
Sure.
Can we deal with a little
Your mic.
semantics? This on?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And ask that we say that the meeting is going to permit public discussion as opposed to public comment. Because it's semantics.
That-
One is 1 minute, 2 minute.
Sure.
Sit down.
I think that's
The
fine.
other thing is I ask you a question, you respond to it, et cetera. You know, I think that is a big difference of that.
I think that's fine. I think that's fine. And it's a semantics point, and we're gonna have our discussion on the item anyway. So I'd be happy to do any day of the week that we can get Alex with enough notice. So I'll do it on a Friday. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to get it on the calendar because I want to put it forward in the right way. Okay. So we'll wait to hear back from our manager on the availability of Alex, and we'll get a date for it. And we'll move forward. All right. So having concluded the discussion topic on 12A, let's move on to 12B. Commissioner Kennedy?
Okay, let me pull my item up here. Okay, so this is a looking forward kind of an item. Right now, I'm very generally pleased with how things are operating here in the village, the job the staff is doing. We have, no day is ever perfect, and, nothing's ever perfect in this life. But generally speaking, we're in a pretty good place right now. And all things being relative to when I became a commissioner, we're in a fabulous place right now. Okay, because we brought Mario on and he dug us out of a big hole. So some of you may not even have lived here then, or were as engaged as you are now. But we weren't always running this smoothly. And when things are going well, I think that's the time that you plan for the day that maybe it won't be. Because we were in a really bad place when Mario came in. Things were quite a mess. We were caught with our pants down and it was nearly disastrous. I mean, it was really that bad at a certain point. And Mario came in here and he dragged us out of a ditch and he brought staff in and started making things a lot better. And he's continuing to work to make things better. But with such a tiny staff, and we really have a chief executive officer with a very tiny staff, and department heads hardly even have departments underneath them. When you're small as this, one change can really kind of bring you to your knees, or at least stop any kind of forward momentum that you have. I'm talking about someone leaving voluntarily, something happening that someone is let go, illness, accident, something goes wrong. And when you're missing one person in a tiny organization, and you don't have all the redundancy that comes in with bigger organizations and people who are cross-trained and department heads, you can find yourself in a bad place very easily. And that has happened in this village. It's happened more than once, but since I've lived here, it happened once in a very, very significant way. And thankfully, Mario came along and made that better for us. I'm concerned that we may not be prepared for that. And I hope that day never comes again, whether it's in a big dramatic fashion or in a smaller way. But I don't want there to be a transition that we're not prepared for and none of us are prepared for. And we're left scrambling to, working without a manager, working without a clerk. I just want to make sure we're prepared. So there are some things that I would like to, Mario's going to speak to this, I know, that I would like to hear him talk to about how we're prepared for that and how he's preparing for the future. Because I'm just going to say this, and because we have to have these conversations here in public, I don't anticipate Mario's going to work here forever. He's young, he's talented, he's upwardly mobile, he's very visible in this community. He has lots of great experience, and now he's got the big title and he's doing a good job and everyone knows it. We're not the only ones who know it. Everybody knows it. Okay. So don't think that people aren't going to come knocking on his door. And, we don't pay that much. So, there are clerks that probably make 3, 4, 5 times what Shantae makes here, and people that make so much more than what Mario makes. And they have people working under them and departments and all kinds of help and support. And it's a whole different animal here in Biscayne Park than it does in other places. So I think we need to be prepared and anticipate that there will be change at some point and that we need to be prepared for that change and know that staff has us prepared for that change. Here are some two specific things that concern me. Things on a calendar not being visible. We have gotten caught with our pants down so many times in this village because no one knew of a deadline. No one knew of a contract renewal. I mean, so many things. They aren't happening as often now, but there was a time, they still happened, but they're still happening. So things sneak up and bite you in the butt. And we've had some big ones come up like, oh, you're kidding. And all of a sudden it's special meetings and emergency things and resolutions and an ordinance and fix this and budget things. Because it wasn't on a calendar to remind anyone, hey, in 3 months, that contract expires. The employee health insurance expires in 4 months. It's time to negotiate, renew, whatever it is. There are so many moving parts. And none of us know what those things are and when those deadlines are. I kind of now know that, oh, in the spring, that's when this is likely to happen. And we know when budget season is. But at the beginning, I was like caught off guard so many times, like, what's this doing on the agenda? Oh, you're kidding. We're late. We were late on things. The CITT mess is the biggest example of all. Happy birthday, Janie. Thanks for coming. Should have brought her a cupcake. The CITT, that was simply a matter of calendars not being minded and people ignoring past due notices, you know? So that was a big mess. And then, so the calendar, I'd like to see a calendar that has all of this on it. Now, remember that anything that is made is public record. So just throwing that out there, just so you know, it's not like Mario could make something just for us that no one else could ever see because everything we do is public record. And then the other thing is the status of all the current projects that are going on. If Mario, took another job today or, God forbid, something good happens, something bad happens, whatever, and there are projects going on, it's like we aren't quite sure what the status is. We have the drain projects, we have the strategic planning, we have all these things. And I don't know that we're prepared to make a smooth transition and not put bumps in front of us and possibly, have a real bad thing happen because we weren't prepared. So that's the reason I put this topic on here. It's not, and I'm going to state this emphatically. Although this would give us more visibility, if we had things like this, it would give us more visibility, obviously, everybody more visibility. This has nothing to do with the fact that I'm in any way dissatisfied with anything that's going on here. It's simply, I want to know that this organization is prepared for the change that will inevitably come about when something happens with one of our employees, whether that be something good, bad, or indifferent. So that's the topic that I'm putting out here for you tonight. And it's nothing negative in any way whatsoever. It's simply, I want, as good as this feels to me right now, I want to make sure that it continues like that. And when there's a transition that does happen, that it's a smooth transition and the next Mario isn't dealing with what this Mario dealt with when he walked in because they don't know what the hell's going on.
Right. So one of the questions that I had when reading through this was, are we looking at this as internal procedures, or are we looking at this as public facing information that is available to, because those are two different things.
Well, everything is public facing in here, right?
Well,
That's the easy answer,
so
right?
I guess that probably the wrong way to say it. The way I'm envisioning it, the vision or the picture that I have in my head, is this an internal procedure within Village Hall? Because kind of one of the things you're kind of describing is what we would call an exit memo. When I would leave a firm, I down all my cases, I say, what's the status of each case? Is there trial? Is it this? It sounds a lot like this rolling status.
Somewhat,
Yeah, right. So
somewhat, yeah.
it's
But you're preparing that when you leave.
right. So that's what I'm saying, is this kind of,
Sometimes things can't be prepared before the change.
is this a preemptive?
Exactly. And it's a minute, exactly.
So. Okay, so.
We don't have it is the point.
Can I say something? Yeah, so, I mean, Mario has heard me on our one-on-one talk about this, several times, but for me, one of the things that, and more as I look into the different departments and I hear, how they operate, I find that what we're missing is basically a standard operating procedure in a place. Not even, so, sorry, is that noise us or, I don't know. So a standard operating procedure usually, and I've had usually for very large corporations that tell you exactly what to do on every position, step by step. That's a very specific document. Police has it, correct? And it's to say if A happens, B happens, and then C happens and D happens. We're very small. So, and does it make sense to come to that? But in our case is more about the flow. For example, the conversation we had with the building department when I met with them was, okay, so how do we operate? So what comes in first? Oh, we have this, and then it goes to the system, and then she, checks it. And then having that flow is in itself is an operating system inside the department. It's no matter who is in the department, if whoever person ESP stands up and leaves, whoever comes next knows that after A does B and C and so on. So that's very specific to the department. I think on the manager's side, it's more about what the standard, which is what I've been talking to Mario about, is about the department. So what do we hope that we can achieve with code, for example, which we're going to discuss, with a budget of $160,000? Well, that buys us, one code officer, and it buys us this agreement with CAP, and it buys us. But what it means that we can only operate at a certain amount of time and people. I mean, if we wanted to start really going and enforcing the code, we would need 3 tons of budget. We don't have that right now because there is no standard to provide if what we're doing is enough. So it becomes very subjective. And I think the same thing happened, and that's why I was very hesitant on the contract on the landscape, is we don't have that. So is 5 people that we currently have, or 4 or 6 or 7, is what we need. So I think it's very important, and this is a topic I was hoping to bring farther into the discussions once I finished visiting the different departments, was what can we do to the size of Biscayne Park with the budgets that we have to operate at our best capacity? Not about what the current people that we have can do, is what 5 people can do. And then we find the best people. Then we have a map, which is also easier come the budget season, because then we have a base. And so we can discuss, okay, so if this is the base that we have, and this is, the current standard that we're currently in, right? And we can say whether, for example, landscape, we need help. We need additional help. We're very green. We want to keep it pretty. We want to keep it to the standard that's here. Okay, but where we are, it's hard to measure. So I think, in my perspective, having those things in place, it's something that I would love to see come from the manager in this case, as his vision for Biscayne Park with the budget that he has. And then escalates all the things that we see here. Communication is part of it. Then we become more tactical. Okay, so within the department, how do we move forward to communicate the current things that are happening? How do we do it internally, but during the commission, because the report is something I would like to see maybe adjusted. We talked about maybe bringing more information versus data, like things that really support the decision-making that we have when we're sitting at the table. But this is part of, again, it's just a tactical part of what we see. Well, if we could and draw a blank page, where like you're given $160,000 of a budget, and you can make all the changes. This is what we have. Is it enough? Is it not enough? So I think evaluating a process, an operating system that explains what needs to happen, evaluating the time. I mean, I don't want to get super specific into it, but this takes a while. And that's why, for me, it was finishing meeting with the departments within this month so that we can move into that drafting of what it would look like, because it has a lot to do with our strategic plan moving forward. But if we were to have that visibility of each department, then we can tackle and say, guys, we don't have money for communication. No wonder nobody knows what's happening. Or Mario is spread thin because he's doing billing department, which he currently has 10% allocated on the budget now, starting today. He's doing, that's part of his time. He's doing this, there is no time to provide us. So when we come to the budget conversations, then we got to say, okay, so what do we change? When we talk about, again, maintenance, public works, we have a certain amount of people. And so what is it? The people do a certain job and we have a schedule for them. Is it done in the time that we're expecting it to see? Is it a standard that we believe it's, again, I'm not a landscape expert, but that's where we have experts that we actually hiring to help us out on this. So maybe they could provide help on putting this together. But again, I would love to see, in this case, Mario and the manager, because we're talking about in the moment Mario does not, he's no longer with us, he moves on, whatever it might be. And again, I agree, he's been doing a wonderful job. I mean, I can't talk about the past, but I think all the qualities of management are there. It's just when it comes to translating it out to us and what the vision is very important. So we're all on the same page to have that conversation on what we need to tweak. And we don't have that. So again, this is very tactical to my view on we're looking at this little piece of why can we show communication, but I would like to go higher and see what's the vision for the department. If we're going to go next to code, we can use this as an example. And Mario, I don't know in this case, in other cities, how they do it. I want to say I'm sure that there is systems in place. Again, corporation has it. Literally, when I had a meeting with CAP, Pedro brought it up. Oh yeah, we have SOPs and we know exactly how to, what the flow is. So defining that flow, then when we can identify where do we put communication? Is it an external vendor? Is it an internal thing? I understand. And again, I'm going through the branches here with this, but because my idea is to finish again, having an internal view of where we stand, but it really affects then everything under that. So then we can talk about the little things that can happen.
So two things very quickly. It sounds like what you're describing, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Sounds like what you're describing is a large picture, and that it probably needs a segmented approach.
Correct.
Because speaking to, one of the things that has been brought up to us is like, we are doing a lot.
Yes.
And we don't want to overload our plate with,
Correct.
if it looks like this, we don't want to do all this all at once. So that was to your point. Commissioner Oliveira, I know you said, you started to say something about this, there being some sort of technological solution to this.
Surely. Well, the topic was related to calendars and reports, reminders, et cetera. I mean, there are many records management, operating systems, et cetera, that I'm sure there's one that exists for municipality. Thereby everything gets loaded in, a calendar is maintained, access is given, producer level, admin level, et cetera. That the manager obviously controls and can delegate to his team. And I would think if we had the money to get something like that set up for Mario, I think his quality of life would improve.
Yes.
And of course, SOPs, obvious, it's, it goes, okay, obviously each department needs that and the way that we run things and, and all that is tied to, which I believe is why the manager brought a strategic vision plan to us many months ago, in an effort to start eating this elephant, and getting it more and more efficient. And I think that's what's happening.
Mhm.
So if I may, so the procedures, absolutely. That's a more top
Yeah, top level.
kind of thing. And that's really, and I was trying to be, you use the word tactical, I'll accept that. I was trying to be real specific that I was giving two examples of things that we would need, two specific things that I think we need now. So to what you just described, Absolutely. And if we use software to incorporate all of that and make it all, work synergistically, fabulous. But specifically right now, there are two things that concern me, like right now. I'm thinking about if the day that's coming is tomorrow or next Wednesday, you know what I mean? Is a calendar's easy. You can do Google Calendar for that matter.
Mhm.
That people have access to. But it's the calendar of all the deadlines and contracts and all of that stuff and the budget season and everything. There are so many things that I probably not even aware of that I don't want someone else to have to guess. Mario came on and he was trying to find this stuff out. Things were being like arriving on his desk, like, oh no, now there's this,
Where does
That's
it sit
easy.
now?
Hmm?
Do we know? Where does it sit now, Mario? Like all the deadlines for contracts and kind of the examples that we brought up by Commissioner Kennedy.
On a spreadsheet, not on my computer, on the clerk's server drive. Yes. So what I've been doing since I've gotten here is, and I've used this analogy before for something else, but I think it fits. We're changing the tile in the shower while taking a shower.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's
It's a good analogy.
yeah.
It's complicated.
It's a little complicated. And everything that everybody has said is absolutely correct. The question is, how can we get up to just standard practice, right? That we've talked about that all these other companies kind of do when they started, that were just never done here. And it's with everything. So the good thing with OpenGov, when we went to electronic on the building side, it required us to sit down, especially for the building and a permit application. We needed to map how the application moves through the system. So it's kind of like a flow chart
Mhm.
for each application. So we somewhat have that SOP built into each application on the back end, because we need to make sure that, step one, application review. Did they fill everything out? Did they have all the attachments, all that kind of stuff? Does it need to go to planning? If it needs to go to planning, you gotta do these steps.
You built all of this when you.
We built, that's all the back end of OpenGov,
OpenGov.
right? CAP also has manuals that they have to, I've told them, I go, well, one of the things you guys have to do is build us the manual of these things in our operations as well. So the traditional SOP, right? One of the first things that I looked at when we hired Shantae, and it was the first project I think I gave her, was build an SOP for the clerk, because I know what a clerk does, but I don't know all the details. And Roseanne left. We had an interim person who was working remotely to get us through the agenda and have, the minutes. But then Shantae came in the same way I came in, and we just kind of sat down on our desks and said, what did I get myself into? And so she created that. So we have that for the clerk department. Police has their own SOP, and they're fine tuning it now through accreditation and stuff like that. Code, the organization that does all the code certification and training, they're going to that type of police model for the department to be accredited. But I've already talked to Doreen and I said, hey, have you been thinking about SOPs? Like, what's the right way? She goes, yeah, it's how I started reorganizing everything, but there's a bunch of stuff I had to clear out before I get to just writing the actual manual, right? And so the manual there, she says she's gonna have two, and she was kind of separating at least the binder covers for our discussion. But when I told her not to be here when I knew it was gonna be tabled. So one is administrative, all the stuff that they have to do in the office, right? All the stuff that even Linda has helped kind of organize because it was a complete mess. And then another for field, right? And so we're taking those type of approaches. In everything that I've done as the village manager and throughout my career, I build redundancies because I almost want to say I've started to become the Mr. Fix-It, right? It's like, hey, Mario, here's the situation. It's really bad. Figure it out. And how do we make it better? And so I've done that from an employee perspective. I've done that from a department head perspective. I've done that from an ACM basically perspective. And now I've done it as a village manager as well. So in every stop of my career, I've had to do it to some degree. And so for CITT, it wasn't just me filling out the quarterly reports. It's Albert, go out, do all the things, talk to me. Let's make sure that everything's working together. Now it's me and Isa having those conversations. For the, the village also has a KEMP, a certified emergency management plan. That's with the state that we probably have to review now, coming up shortly, but there's that plan, which is an SOP, of how we're going to organize that. So I have all of these little projects, things that we've discussed. I will admit, I don't keep up the ordinance discussions too much, that the commission has, more so than contracts, projects, where are we with the log cabin, where are we with this, things that I have to kind of negotiate on a day-to-day basis and stuff like that. And then I have different columns, primary contacts. That's not obviously me, whether it's Paul, and he's usually a secondary contact for everything because everything costs money, right? Whether it's Isa, whether it's the chief, whether it's Alan, whether it's Pedro, whether it's Doreen, whether it's you all have never, I've never mentioned his name and you haven't met him. Rolando is the civil engineer that CAP lends us to oversee the construction projects that we have, and he just makes sure that everything's doing things the right way. So whether it's him, all of these projects there's projects in line that has the primary contact is CCNA. Whoever the firm is going to be once it's elected, hopefully you'll have that in front of you. So I have those people that I work with on a regular basis. They know where the problem is or where the project is, what's coming up, what's due. There's also a column that says reminder, like for, I think the easiest example to give you, Mac, remember we had the debris monitoring contract. And it was like, hey, let's remember, as opposed to, because the way that the contract was done, the extension date was in like the middle of hurricane season or something. So it was like, hey, we need to do another extension. Remember to do this in June and not wait until this other date. And so, it's like, yeah, I had calendared it and it was part of my spreadsheet and I brought it in when we had to do it. So there's that kind of, and I agree, I think there's two. To the technology standpoint, yes, there is. And I get bombarded by people trying to sell, public works. There's a software for public works to do asset management and to do how many work orders a day they do and all of these things, which is, there's one program that I sat through a presentation and then I saw at ICMA, it's called Dude. And I was like, this is really, really cool. That's the problem, because it's always based on the city's budget. It's not like, hey, our license is going to be $5,000 a year. It's like, oh, your budget is this much, so it's that much. For OpenGov, which is on the building department, its initial cost was 60 something thousand, and then on a yearly basis, it's 30 something thousand. So, it's like, yeah, there's software for all these things, but we start looking at, do I want to recommend a $20,000 yearly expense item for software when I know that we need the $20,000 to repair the roof? And those are correct. And so then it becomes more of, well, will the spreadsheet be sufficient enough as long as I know that, hey, these other people are working with it, right? At the end of the day, I say all that to try to give you at least a little bit of acid relief that, yes, I am building redundancies. Yes, I am trying to look at these things. No, it's not a public calendar for everybody to see, oh, where are we with that? However, if the commission wishes to go that route beyond just the typical SOP manual, then we will get there if that's what you all want. We can, I can look a little bit more and figure something out and present it to you all. And then, we can talk one-on-one and we can come down to something that I can then present to you all here, and you can take a vote on this is what it's going to be, or consensus. I don't know that we really need to get in that because each manager is always going to be different. I think the important part is, hey, how long is this contract for CAP? Using CAP as an example, we have a 3-year contract with a possible 2-year extensions, which makes it 5 years total, right? When is that? When do we have to do that first extension? Oh, it's going to be 2026. Oh, okay. Then, is there somewhere that says in 2026 we need to do an extension, right? So, of course.
Does the legal department provide any support on this?
No, they don't keep track of the contracts. We could get very sophisticated with software again and
Yeah.
record retention that you have for procurement and things like that. So it can, but again, it also comes down to, where we want to do and how much we want to spend. And then also something that we talked about, our means. Do we have the people capable of maintaining it? Because you can have the system, but if you're not putting good data,
Yeah.
then it's not worth what you're paying for, right? And so like Public Works, yeah, you can have a great system for Public Works, but these aren't the most tech savvy people.
Right.
And so, you're going to leave it down to essentially either it was Albert, now it's Isa, whoever becomes that permanent role, then,
Yeah, and
it's just
not even
one
the
person,
workload.
but
Yeah.
they also have to do all these other, so it just kind of depends on what's going to be a good cultural fit. But I do hear the commission. I heard it during my evaluation. And it's why I brought the strategic plan, because I think overall that gives you an idea of where we're heading, right? And what are these important things and what has to pass this test for it to be relevant for you all. And the redundancies being built, I could definitely look into something a little bit more robust so that you all have the comfort feeling a little bit more. And I'll go through and, there's sometimes where we have contracts, I'll tell you, our phone system. I just learned we're out of our contract with our phone system, right? Which is internet provided. So we got, hey, here's a renewal in, I think it was February 7th. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I can't just renew this. I got to take it to the commission. But before I take it to the commission, I need to know, is this even a viable plan, right? Is the cost right? So now I go and talk to other vendors. And today I finally got a clarification from our incumbent, and you'll have, a waiver of bid, because everybody's like, if they can offer you that service for that little money, just run. Like, you can't even get the state contract for that kind of money. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's just continuing the service. Yeah. Okay. So, I got to put all that together, but it's going to take time to go through every single aspect and every single contract and say, okay, this is where we are, and put that. We can build that, we can do that. But, going back to last week, we also need to slow down. Because if we're going to dedicate a ton of time into researching all of the contracts and one of the good things we did with when I created the elected officials orientation book, which I gave to all of you, whether you were elected or not, that sparked the question which the vice mayor asked and said, what are all our active contracts? And so we went through and we put all of our active contracts on a drive. So we have that. So now it's going each individually and saying, okay, this is the name, this is the date, and putting it on the spreadsheet. That's just time consuming, but we can do that, right? So we can put all that kind of
Done
together.
like in an instant, but working towards
that, right?
as quickly as possible. Because look, this isn't about creating more work, or certainly busy work. And if you want to come back to us and share with us ideas for software that could accomplish it for you in a better way, I'm just always very leery of a small
There-
organization over investing in these things that
Yeah.
are beyond their needs.
And here's one other thing with software, which you're right, software a lot of times can automate the process or the things, but someone has to put it in the first time.
Someone has to
And
have
that's
to-
pretty extensive to do, right? So no matter what, it's gonna be time consuming. I would just say, you know, we're kind of working there. Let me kind of take a step back, take a look. I don't think things are as dire as what it was when I stepped in.
Oh, my God.
And I know, and I know, and I say dire more of, if I win the Powerball tomorrow and I'm going to Tahiti and I will go, okay, I don't think whoever's going to sit in my seat is gonna be like, I have no idea what's happening. They're gonna have no idea because they need to learn where to look. But again, I worked with Shantae and that Excel spreadsheet is on her drive. It's not on mine. I have access to it, obviously, and I can upload and change it, but it's on her drive for a reason, because I want that to stay within the records department, right? It is CITT, ISA's doing a bunch of stuff with that reporting and helping me, and also Sharon, you know, so you have the finance and you have the public works record or administrator and the city manager, 3 people working together at all, because when finance is not available, well, I know the things that I signed and this is the things that we approved on the invoices, and, you know, I can fill that role. And when I'm not here, those 2 can get together. And so I try to do it in 3s, because when one person's out, there's still 2 people who can take that. So that's the kind of situation we are. But I think what I've taken from the conversation is, okay, Mario, great. Can you put it in a way that we can kind of see that for ourselves, so that we have more assurances that, okay, we know, and then we can even give that person, you know, hey, when I meet that next person, it's like, hey, okay, like this is where we are with this, and, you know, make sure you go and look for this because this is where we are. So yeah, I'll put a little bit more of that together.
And if
Yeah,
it
like
were-
a legend. Yeah.
Just a status of all the current projects,
Mhm.
and then add to your list of current projects for this project, I suppose.
Right.
That's what I'm saying is, if
I'll put that together for you.
someone to
all.
be able to
Yes.
step in and say, okay, whether we're an interim person or a permanent person,
Mhm.
because even if it's not a dire
I got a good 6 numbers. I won't share them, but I've got good 6 numbers for the Powerball.
So, but if you, it's not even necessarily a dire situation. I just don't want us to even lose any steam, any momentum
Yeah.
we have on things, and people stumbling over things.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the way of being that I've tried to manage, not only with my staff, but with you all, of being as open and as transparent as I can possibly be. I think you all are better prepared than where you were when you stepped in, Mac, right? You all understand, hey, okay, Mario was kind of working, and yeah, he talked to me about this and possibly talking to the county about this other project. Okay. But yes, listing it out, I'll put that together for you all,
That'd be
so that you guys can take a look. And yes, Vice Mayor, each department is looking to see how we can get a formal SOP in writing, so that when somebody new comes in, they can kind of follow that as well. So we have been listening to that concern as well.
Thank you. And I think the idea, again, on a bigger picture is providing also for your position, you know? So it's each department, but then how the drives connect technologies. I don't know this from a technology perspective, but can ISA access the share file that you have for A, B, and C? Can, you know, providing for all those things kind of being integrated, it's important. And then systems, because I said.
We were just looking at Microsoft, like, because I use Teams, you know, everything is on Teams, like Teams solutions, you know, Google solutions and Slack solutions. It's just,
There's so many options.
the options are.
But we just need to be assured that we don't find ourselves in that position. And I lived it. It was before remember, I was on the commission that hired Mario. And it was, you guys have no idea the mess that we were dealing with. It was scary. We were at a scary point in this village, and we can't allow ourselves to go anywhere remotely close to that again. Okay,
Good.
so
So
we kind of came to a good conclusion on that.
Yeah.
We had that discussion. Thank you, Mario. And I hope you really do understand that my interest in the general good and the moving things forward and nothing.
Absolutely, sir. And it's again why I brought the strategic plan forward. I don't mince words. I've never, like, you know, I don't see myself here for 30 years, right? And so what's the best thing I can do for the village is make sure that whether I win the Powerball or I walk out tonight and someone's driving 100 miles an hour on Sixth Avenue and crashes into me, you know, we got to leave the village in a good spot and to be able to move forward. So that's always the intent, is how can I leave Biscayne Park better than what I found?
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Manager. We'll look forward to hearing what you come back with, and we'll be excited to address it. So I think that concludes now discussion item 13A. 14, which I think the only thing we're placing on the next agenda is going to be, oh, I'm sorry. I messed up. 12B, we've been moving 13A to the next agenda.
And we'll come back with a special meeting for 10.3 once I get the dates from Alex as well. And yeah, that was the code discussion. So
Great. Well, I relent that Art is not here to witness this. But I think we've come to the conclusion at 9:35. So request for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.